I'd like to call the August 15th Longmont City Study Session Council to order. Could we please start with the roll call?
Mayor Coombs?
Here.
Councilmember Bagley?
Here.
Christensen? Here. Finley? Here. Moore?
Here.
Peck? Here. Santos?
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Okay, let's stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilmember, Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. A couple of things. As the airport liaison from council, I just wanted to let council know about what's going on with the Airport Advisory Board. We asked them to bring back a recommendation on rates and charges for non-exclusive use of public areas back in May, I think. So they've looked at it for 3 months and they haven't taken any action on it. So I'd like to see what council wants to do.
Wow. Do we know why they haven't taken any action on it? Because I don't sit on the board, so. Councilmember Christensen?
Well, I do want them to take action on it, but since they won't, then I think we should. You know,
Okay.
We asked for them to review it, and since they haven't reviewed it, I think we should put it on a future agenda to move
Take
forward.
action on? Okay.
Yeah,
I agree.
to discuss.
Okay. I think that's, you got the direction that.
Yeah. Yeah, deadline stimulate progress, just let them know.
Yeah, what kind of deadline do you need to bring back a?
So what I understand is council's directing us to bring that back to you all.
Right, yeah, and we'll make the
So,
decision on it.
What we can do is we can communicate to the airport board, this was council's direction. If you all want to take an action, then you need to call a special meeting,
Mayor?
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah. Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Deadlines stimulate progress, so, yeah, put it on our agenda, and then notify the Airport Advisory Board that if they want to have input into this matter, that they need to do it before that date, and then we can either have their input when we talk and vote, or we'll just do it without them, but it needs to happen.
So, the calendars. Not good. What? Right, but I'm looking, so we have a regular meeting next week, so it's too late for that. Three-ish weeks, good?
The 5th?
No, the 5th, you all canceled that meeting, I believe, the 12th. Is that a study session?
It's a regular session.
My calendar's not.
12th is a regular session.
The 12th of.
September.
So 12th, September 12th?
Fun?
Yep.
Yep.
Staff shouldn't have to do much, right? You don't have to do much.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. Councilmember Moore?
Yeah, I also have had a individual call me about tornado sirens, and was a concern that was made to me that people that don't have smartphones, don't use their computer very much, and have limited means to purchase weather radios. She was asking what we can do to help solve that issue now that we don't have sirens anymore. And so that was a request that I said I'd bring back to council and say, you know, what are we what do we think we can do about this? If they don't have the means to buy one and they don't have a smartphone, we've kind of taken them out of the loop, maybe unintentionally.
Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I thought we had put in, and I thought I saw it in City Line, but also for those that may not have access to the internet, it was in City Line, that you can sign up for updates or things. If you put in a phone number, you can get those type of updates. Am I incorrect in that?
Well, you can. We have that in our Everbridge system that's more connected with cell phones. What we talked about in terms of the proposal, and that's one of the items that we're going to have in the budget discussions, is to bring in a system that actually will contact landlines and other items. But that is as we talked about, a couple of $100,000 expense that we're looking at for next year. In the meantime, what we do have and what we strongly encourage folks to utilize is actually a NOAA weather radio. We do have some of those that the Office of Emergency Management have purchased for folks that are in need of those types of devices. And talking, Dan Eman got, I think, the same call from the same individual. And talking with Dan, what we talked about is looking at creating some type of program. We would need to design the parameters on this program for those that are in need, financial need, where they can get one of these NOAA weather radios. And one of the things that we do with our firefighters is they go to homes and install smoke alarms. And so we'll talk about how we can work with Jared and the fire group, so once we can get those, that they can go in and help program them, because you have to program certain codes in. As we talked about, when we talked about the outdoor warning system, it is designed for outdoor notification. Depending on where you live, you may or may not hear it. As we indicated in that City Line, what we said is we are also not getting the desired effect. So when we would trigger the outdoor warning system, people would go outside instead of stay in their homes. And so that's when council gave us the direction to look at this other approach and look at that. So that being said, one of the things that we talk about when you talk about an all-hazard city is that that NOAA weather radio and the emergency broadcast system are really the quickest that they get out into the community. If you have one of those weather radios, you'll hear about it at the same time we get notified, because that's coming immediately from the National Weather Service. So that's what we're looking at, and we can, in talking to Dan last week, we can bring that to council.
Councilmember Christensen?
Can we not, we have reverse notice, it's like they have with the school system, and you can put that on, if people sign up for the cell phones, but you can also put it on the landlines. We already have that, don't we?
We have some of it. I'm sort of getting into the deep end of the pool now on that technology. I know that when you're identifying certain neighborhoods, when you do the geospatial work where you outline it, it's easier to use. When it's a broader, under the current system that we have, when it's a larger area, if I'm remembering it correctly, I think it's harder to push those out and get them out quickly. The new systems that you're looking at for broader community notification have the ability to do that, and it's somehow embedded in the technology or how they go into the systems. But at that point, I'm talking off of very basic knowledge in terms of the technology.
Well, the school system has the ability to notify parents, of any kind of emergency for the whole school system, which is pretty extensive. So
it's similar to our Everbridge system.
Okay.
And so when we had the flood, we actually utilized that system in the notification to folks. And so it's very similar to the school district system. It's not as robust as what we're looking at as we look to the future,
right,
in the new program.
Yeah, I'm still very uncomfortable not having big loud sirens, but we've already had that discussion. So, I thank Councilman Moore for bringing that forward.
And
I've heard the
say,
same thing.
I think in this individual's case, Dan did offer to get them a NOAA weather radio and help them set it up. I'm not sure if they took him up on that offer or not.
I know, but there are just a lot of people in town who aren't, they're just still, they don't even know we don't have the sirens anymore. They're just counting on them.
Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Harold, perhaps a quick update from Dan would be good to all 7 of us.
We'll definitely do that.
Thanks.
All right. I guess we'll go on to first call, public invited to be heard. And first person on the list is Michelle Britsky.
We have all this fancy equipment. I'll just keep this short and sweet, but I'm just here to support the proposed time limits for the downtown parking. By having all-day parking in front of my business, it really limits the availability to have adequate turnover for customers. And by having more uniform and consistent time limits, it'll make parking decisions easier for our customers. Thank you.
Okay, Ryan Kugarun. Excuse me, Kriegerud. Sorry.
I'm used to it. Okay. Ryan Kriegerud, 1512 Fleming Drive. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about biking and downtown development, and then I'm going to wrap it up with some Terry Lake stuff. So this evening you're going to be talking about the downtown parking study that was done and so forth. And I was president of Bicycle Longmont from about 2009 until 2016. And one of the things that we heard over and over again was cyclists want to get downtown and pedestrians want to get downtown and enjoy themselves. And I know that one of the things that you all have heard is that when people drive downtown, they want to be able to park close to the stores and that sort of thing. And cycling, we're no different. When we ride our bikes downtown, we want to see bike racks in front of the buildings, or at least where we can see our bikes, because it's much easier to run off with a road bike, mountain bike, cruiser, what have you, than it is to like jump into a GMC Sierra and hightail it out of downtown and that kind of thing. So what we'd like to see is more bike racks and those kinds of things downtown to help facilitate people getting downtown and to let them know that their bikes are going to be safe while they're shopping in the downtown area. But also, one of the things that staff has been talking about is creating cycle-specific infrastructure along Kaufman Street to help entice people to come downtown. And I fervently support that. I also support number 3 on the in your council communication that says let's do I believe it is a multimodal study for downtown and kind of figure out how people are accessing it, what they can do to make it better, and those kinds of things. Because I'm not sure, how do I get the Strava thing up quick? So Longmont, in 2013, we had a little flood, as you all are very aware. And the flood took out the Greenway. It took out the Sunset Street Bridge. And what that actually set up for us in the cycling community and also the city of Longmont, whether they're aware of it or not, it created a case study on if you build it or designate it, they will come. So what I want to do is just quickly zoom in to Walton, right down here. And this is Strava, which is a Mayor Coombs, you're more than familiar with it. Cyclists use this to track their workouts, track commuting, track their bike use, and also their running. So what we found out here was if you build it or designate it, they will come. And what I'm showing you is on the left side of your screen is 2014, and on the right side is 2015. And why this is important is that Sunset Street was closed to everybody in 2014. In 2015, the city opened it up to pedestrians and cyclists. And what you'll notice as I drag the map from the left to the right, or no, to the left, oh, nuts, already? You'll see Sunset Street, oh, right there, get red, essentially, which shows increased traffic for cyclists using Sunset Street. No cars on that road, nothing. Cyclists and pedestrians are able to use that. And what we noticed going forward is...
Yeah, your 3 minutes is up, I'm sorry, but...
Okay.
Otherwise... You have my support. James Kenworthy.
James Kenworthy, 107 Caribou Place. I read in the newspaper a few days ago a opinion piece by Julia Pernack. And what came to mind while I was reading that is the word sanctimonious. I believe that word has a root that is same family as saint. She made a lot of points about Joan Peck. And I just want to say that Julia was mayor from 2000 to 2006, I believe. And she made a lot of mistakes. And I know of 2 of those mistakes that never made the newspaper. So here's how it works. Julia makes mistakes and covers them up. Somebody else makes mistakes, and she writes an article that really stunk. And that's the way it goes. Somebody makes a mistake, somebody else makes political hay. I can tell you, when you make political hay, the person you hurt the most is yourself. If you say, okay, I'm going to skip all that. We have plenty of hate and animosity coming from Washington, D.C. And what we need to do as citizens and staff members and city council members is try a little respect. The way to counter the kind of stuff that went on in, oh boy, I forgot the name of the city.
Charlottesville?
Thank you. Is to be kind to each other and just cut the crap. The more, okay, I think I'm done. Am I clear? Is that clear? Clear? All right, thank you.
Ron Gallegos?
Ron Gallegos, 424 Kimbark. Good evening, Mayor and council members. The DDA tonight will talk about parking and parking management. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for the community to talk about the larger issue about downtown and transportation. For 30 years, or since I've been in Longmont, we've been talking about parking garages. I would really like to see that kind of vision come to fruition and finally to a build out, because I think it would be significantly impact downtown in a very positive fashion. We're talking about multimodal. If we got diagonal parking off both Kimbark and Kaufman, we could create truly a multimodal downtown for bikes. I think we also need to look at creating a pedestrian mall, closing Main Street at 3rd all the way to 9th, create a Spanish Plaza, and then look at creating a bypass on Airport Road. Airport Road up to 17th is almost completely built out. I think we should go around the lake and do a service to the state highway system and those folks that are trying to get north to Fort Collins and Berthoud and whatnot. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity to stop, take a larger look, maybe do a community charrette, and deal with more than just parking and additional parking spaces. While I think that's good, it's only symptomatic of a larger problem, and I think we need to address the larger problem. Thank you.
Peter Adene?
All right. Good evening, city leaders. First of all, thanks again for the great work you're all doing to build this wonderful city. It's a great place to be, and I'm thankful every day for it. Now, it's my understanding you're going to be
Could you start out with your name and address, please, for the record?
Yeah, so Peter Adney, 5 Sunset Circle.
Thank you.
And 712 Main Street is one of my business addresses. It's my understanding you're going to be discussing multimodal transport in the downtown region at this meeting. I just wanted to add my support as an owner of one Main Street business, co-owner of a second one, and soon to be several more. I'm a big fan of what's going on downtown right now. So my family and I just got back from a summer vacation in Canada. That's where we originally grew up. And we live in the capital when we're there, the city of Ottawa. And in Ottawa, they're ripping up car lanes left and right and replacing them with these nice green painted bike lanes protected by curbs all over the city. And people are flooding out like crazy. I did a 40-kilometer, 30-mile bike ride with a bunch of people through the entire city, and everyone's celebrating it. And then I got back from this trip, and I found in front of my building, I biked down to my building, and I found a freshly repainted 7-lane superhighway in front of my building of Main Street. This glossy blacktop is like 2 car lanes in each direction, plus a turning lane, plus free parking on each side, just going down forever. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, so I was the only guy. And I was like, this is beautiful work, but how could this still be happening in the year 2017 when we're talking about multimodal? Like, this is the most valuable land in our city. So you've probably heard me say this before. I just wanted to add my support again to consider making some changes someday, because to change people's behavior, you need to create different incentives. Rule number 1 in economics is that people respond to economic incentives. So if you want people to drive less and actually use the bike infrastructure we're starting to make, you have to make it just a tiny bit less convenient for cars. So I would propose that you start thinking about this and spending a bit less money on the stuff we're doing to facilitate cars. And I would disagree that we should make a parking garage at $20,000 a space. We should reduce the parking, which is exorbitant use of our land, and just see what happens. Just watch what people do when you reduce the convenience for cars. It saves an incredible amount of money. You fix your entire city and you make a bunch of money in the process. So, yeah, that's it. Less than 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You must have read the book, How Cycling Can Save the World.
That's the next one on my list. I read Happy City, and I do have How Cycling Can Save the World sitting on my coffee table for the next one.
Sarah Well.
Hi, I'm Sarah Welly, 829 4th Avenue. I'm here as an Old Town resident who wants to see the City of Longmont support and invest in bicycling and walking in our city, especially around Main Street. I'm also here as a mother who rides my bike with my children. We ride our bikes to run errands, to get groceries, to pick up, drop off at school, go to the library, so many things. I came tonight to represent so many other women and mothers and casual cyclists in Longmont that I chat with regularly about cycling in our town. There is a pent-up demand for more dedicated, protected cycling routes where we can bicycle as casual cyclists and feel safe. We want paths that connect the greenways with Main Street, that connect neighborhoods with commerce. People want to cycle more in the context of their daily lives, and I would love to see Longmont prioritize investment and development of protected, meaning physically divided from cars, bike routes. Thank you.
Thank you. Devin Quince.
Hello, Mayor, council members. I'm Devin Quince, 911 Venice Street and 418 Main Street, downtown business owner. I'm here to, first of all, say that I really love that the public process worked again, in a number of ways. I've been here 20 years, and I love how the public process worked with the parking recommendations getting voted down. Nice job to LDDA for that. I'm also an avid supporter of bicycle infrastructure, particularly protected. We need to get more people downtown and walking, biking, but another problem that we have, which isn't necessarily downtown, but is tied to tonight, is Longmont is split into islands, and we can have all the great downtown bike infrastructure we want if people can't get to it from the Home Depot area, the other side of the east side. There's a lot of roads that are dangerous to cross, so that's another thing we need to think about in our multimodal plan, if we push for it, is how do we connect Longmont to downtown for biking, walking, using mass transit. So thank you very much.
Thank you. John Creighton.
Good evening, everyone. John Creighton, 328 Pratt, and High Plains Bank, 600 Kimbark. first like to start by saying thank you to all of you for giving me the opportunity to serve on the LDDA board. Appreciate that. And I'm here to speak specifically on the parking plan that's before you tonight. I, as a downtown business owner, had the opportunity to participate in that process. And I think for all of us trying to share a relatively small space, there was a very good job done to balance competing needs for parking. You heard other business owners tonight who will benefit greatly. We'll still have all-day parking in front of our business, but that's sort of some of the compromise that you need to make when you're trying to balance competing interests, because there is a need for all-day parking downtown for employees as well as time-limited parking, and so we're happy to be part of a sort of a balanced solution that's being proposed to you all tonight. And we'll say that my experience has lately have forced me into walking the 800 meters from my house to my business more than I used to. So that's been a good part of the process as well. So, thanks.
Brian Johnston.
Hi, I'll be brief. Brian Johnston, 926 Kaufman Street, and I'm officially now been a resident of Longmont for 2 years. It's a wonderful city. I've really enjoyed it here. I've lived a lot of places around this country, and this is certainly one of the better, probably the best place I've ever lived. And but I'm a native of the great Commonwealth of Virginia, and as everyone probably saw, my home state erupted in violence this weekend. And I wasn't around, but I did find out that very quickly on Sunday, in about 3 hours' time, the city, citizens, I'm not sure exactly who even to really credit for all this, but there was a unity rally on Sunday night. I know you were there, Councilmember Peck, and I appreciate it. And so basically, as the self-appointed spokesperson for the state of Virginia and the city of Longmont, I just want to say thank you to those that organized it, the city staff, the council members in attendance, all the people, and it means a lot. It was a rough week in my state, you know, to see what essentially were mostly outsiders coming in and challenging what the elected officials of the city had done. Aside, so I'll say first, it's a direct threat to the sovereignty of the people of Charlottesville, Virginia, what we saw. They elected those officials. The officials decided to take those statues down. And while I respect the right to protest, the amount of outsiders coming in, and while there was violence on both sides, it was particularly excessive, especially one incident on Sunday on the other side. And I just appreciate the people standing up for the people of Virginia for this. We're good people. The city of Charlottesville is a wonderful city. It really is. It's an incredible place, and it's a very progressive city. The people did not want those statues there, and just know that, and we appreciate your support. And I guess that about summarizes it. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody else that'd like to speak? Public invited to speak? All right, we'll move on to our agenda.
Mayor, your first item is Longmont Downtown Development Authority Parking and Access Study Update.
Mayor Coombs and member of council, thank you so much for having us here to talk about our parking and access study. I'd like our board members that are here to stand, just so you know that they are here in the audience to support this. Thank you. This, okay. Just to talk a little bit how we got here. Obviously, I have been here for 6 or 7 years, and there hasn't been a retreat that parking has not come up on. And I would like to say, although no one likes any kind of problems, I've said before, the worst downtown is one that has no parking or access issues, because that means no one is coming. And so we are working very hard to balance this. But we had identified that there were definite hotspots within downtown that we were hearing lots of information about, which gave a perception that nowhere in downtown are there places to park. When we talked about this, because parking is a very personal and passionate issue, we really felt that we needed the data to make good decisions. So we went ahead and commissioned a parking study. And really what we're trying to do is make parking decisions easier and more methodical. It's now a very critical time that we're stewards of our finite resources. There's all kinds of things we would all love to do, but there's only limited resources to do them, which puts us at a real decision point of how we're going to actively manage our parking. The study process, if you remember, it was jointly funded by the DDA and the City of Longmont through the Parking Fund and Boulder County. So Boulder County, as they were doing their community hub, also knew that parking would be changing in downtown. So we put together a steering committee of folks, and we hired Kimley Horn to do our study. So I am right now going to turn it over to Vanessa Soulsby to talk about the findings of the study, and then I'll come back to talk a little bit more.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you so much. My name is Vanessa Soulsby, as Kimberly mentioned. I was your project manager for the downtown parking and access study that we completed in 2016. And I really appreciate the time tonight to present in front of you and share a little bit about our process and our findings and the road forward. Before we get going about the study process, I just want to take a quick minute to say that myself and then my team here tonight with me, we do these types of studies across the country, in Canada, and quite frankly around the world. And I have to compliment not only your city and your DDA staff, your county staff, the folks that participated on the steering committee, and also your board member from the LDDA. They were all very engaged throughout this entire process, and I really appreciate the collaborative nature of our working relationship with them. It's not something that we often find when we're in communities, to have so many people coming to the table together, and it really made the study process, I think, really successful from our perspective. So what we were asked to do was a couple of different things. We were asked to come in and look at both the public and the private parking assets, what was available today. We were also asked to take a look at the current parking operation, mostly enforcement, permit management. We were also asked to look at what opportunities were out there to maximize potentially underutilized resources. As I'll share later in the presentation, and as many of you know, building parking is incredibly expensive, and as cities and towns are looking to be more judicious in where they spend their dollars, they're having a harder time penciling out putting $20,000 or $25,000 into space to build a structured parking facility. So we were also asked at the end of the day to come forward with some recommendations, not just on how to manage parking better, but how to better manage access to downtown, thinking about all modes, which probably isn't something you hear a lot about when you think about doing a parking study. But for us, parking is intensely personal. It's about getting people to the places they want to be, and it's about enhancing the quality of life in your community. Parking is very important to get folks to have access, but people are walking, they're biking more, as you heard tonight. And so we really want to take a comprehensive approach and think about how parking is one option we want to offer to people. One of the foundational elements of our study was public involvement, and we offered a variety of different opportunities for folks to come in person and share their thoughts. We had presentations at LDDA board meetings. I had phone conversations with several stakeholders and residents. We did a big public forum as part of the Building Better Cities initiative that the LDDA put together. We also did an online survey that was widely promoted throughout print. We did mailers, email. I know the LDDA did some flyering as well. That survey had about a little over 800 responses, which for a community of this size is a really significant response rate for a parking survey, which most people think they have other things to do besides take a parking survey. So typically we see around 200 responses. So to have 820, while it's not representative of the entire city of Longmont, I thought it was a good response to have on the survey. So we offered a variety of different options for people to get involved, because it's important for us not only to understand the data, as Kimberly mentioned, but what people are perceiving when they're out on the streets, both of those are the two pieces that we put together when we move forward with our recommendations. It's not, we can't just look at the data. We also have to have that community gut check that really helps us steer where we head with our recommendations. The data piece that I mentioned was we went out with license plate recognition, which you use now currently for your enforcement, allows us to count cars on the street to see how long they're staying, where they're moving. We did that both on-street and off-street, public and private facilities. We collected data throughout the day, not just during the peak times. And I'll show you a map of the study area here in a minute. And just a point of note I think that's important to share with the council is when we do license plate recognition collection, we don't have access to folks' private information or their license plate numbers. We use a unique identifier, and so none of that is retained by us. We definitely wholly and highly value the privacy of all citizens. This next slide, just I know it's a little bit small, but it shows the study area, and the yellow objects that you see are all the lots that we collected on throughout the downtown area. So you can see it was a pretty robust and comprehensive area that we collected in. So what we learned, and again, this is from the engagement side, we heard lots of people say we don't have a parking problem yet. We also heard folks say that there's a perception that there was employees that were taking up on-street parking spaces and parking for longer, perhaps than a couple of hours just to do business downtown. There was also mention of additional signage and educational information needed about where folks could park. And I think there was quite a few comments as well about infrastructure investments, which I think you heard represented here tonight, to achieve the future vision that I've read, and I'm sure that many of your community members have participated in your planning documents about a multimodal future for this community. And I think that's a really important, I think it's a really important inflection point for the council at this particular time. Making infrastructure investments is kind of a nonverbal way of showing what you value in the community. Is it parking spaces? Is it developed land? Is it bike lanes? Is it areas for pedestrians to gather and to create community? What we learned from the data is probably not surprising to many of you, but there are some really intense areas of high occupancy, but they're very limited and they're very localized. So in the northeast area, northeast quadrant of the study area, we saw fairly high occupancy that are around or approaching 85%, which is what we like to see as kind of our industry standard. If occupancy is over 85%, that means that more and more people are having a hard time finding a spot. If it's lower, it means there's more spots that are available for those who'd like to park. Many of your public surface lots are very well utilized, although completely swinging the other way, a lot of your private lots are sitting empty. There's lots of capacity available. So there is a lot of parking in your downtown area. If we go back to that map where you see the land use that is dedicated to parking, public lots, very full. Private lots, mostly empty. On street, system-wide, there's capacity. I know that anecdotally, coming to Longmont several times over the past 3 years or so, never having a trouble finding a spot, but my perception is different than somebody else's. If I have one preferred area and it's in the northeast quadrant of your downtown, that's where I like to park, and every time I go there, Saturday, Thursday, Tuesday, it's full. It's easy to extrapolate out that there's a parking problem system-wide. And so it's all about personal experience, which is why we look at both the data again and what we're hearing from residents about their experience. These next two slides quickly show a little bit about the specific data that we found. Green and blue are low occupancy, lots of available parking. Red means that you're approaching that point where you need to more actively manage parking. Yellow is you're in the danger zone of having parking that is going to become increasingly scarce. So this was Thursday during your peak period. So this is your weekday peak. So mostly blue, mostly green, some localized areas of red. Saturday, as you can see, where parking is more unmanaged, again in that northeast quadrant, much more intense parking use. But blue, that's 0 to 50% utilization. That means that it's very easy to find a parking spot, which covers the remainder of the downtown area. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I think at the end of the day, our findings based on data collection that we did in 2016 is that system-wide, looking at public-private, on and off street, there is available parking for folks. When it's peak time, in those localized areas of downtown, it is hard to find a spot. The data does reflect that, yeah. But if you go a block and a half away, there is available parking. And so I think that this finding from both the data and what we heard from the community helped us shape our recommendations. And the next couple of slides before I turn over to Kimberly, I'm going to walk through those very, very quickly and at a high level with all of you. But I also want to commend you for, there's a lot of comments tonight about additional investment in infrastructure. This community has already done quite a bit. Your alleyways are beautiful. They invite people to park their cars and walk. I know that there's a lot of talk about a transportation or transit center area where you can localize where people are coming into town and get them out of their cars. These are really important, forward-thinking conversations that a lot of communities are having across the Front Range. It's not just here in Longmont. Our team is working in Castle Rock, in Parker, in Boulder, in Fort Collins. The communities there are having the exact same conversations as you are here in Longmont. It's about what does the future look like when there's more than just cars. So for the report recommendations, and again, there's a lot of detail in the report that if you've been having trouble sleeping, you may have stayed up all night and read all 100 pages of it. But if not, I'll try and condense it down in a quick couple of minutes. The first piece, confirm a shared vision. This is so incredibly important. It's not just fluff. The vision comes down to what does the community value? Is it parking lots? Is it bike lanes? What do you value, and where should your staff be headed? Community, your city staff, your LDDA staff, your county staff. What is the shared vision for the future? And I know the community has already done a significant amount of work, but what is the transportation, parking, and access vision for the future? Do the current parking staff have the tools and the training to be effective at their positions? We like to think of parking enforcement officers as downtown ambassadors. They're the first eyes on the street. They know what's going on. They can help welcome people. It's more than just a punitive function. It really is truly sometimes your first impression on visitors. So making sure that folks not only have the ability to do their jobs effectively, but they're supported by their supervisors and the city at large. And that's exactly what I've seen. So just doing more of what you're already doing to invest in your staff, I think, is critical. Parking is a tool to promote economic development. This is really important, I think, as you continue the conversation about whether or not you'd like to invest in future parking infrastructure, a parking facility. Some communities use investment in structured parking as a way to incentivize other development. Some communities are looking to the private sector to help with public-private partnerships, and I know that you've done that exploration with organizations like the county. Parking is definitely a tool that can promote other types of development, and that's something that should be considered. Helping people make the right choice for their trip. This goes back to the options I mentioned earlier. A woman who spoke a little bit earlier tonight really resonated with me. I take my toddler on my bike a lot of places, and sometimes I need my car because I've got a lot to carry. Sometimes I want to take my bike. Sometimes I want to be a pedestrian. And so it's offering people choices and allowing them to know what their choices are. We're not asking everyone to get out of their car, but if someone makes a different choice 1 or 2 days a week, that's a huge difference on your parking demand. So allowing people to know what their options are and making it easy for them to make a different choice and get out of their car. Maximizing your existing parking resources. This is critical, and I think it's your first step. And I know the LDDA, and Kimberly will talk about this in a minute, they are hot on this path. Where do we already have parking that's not being utilized to its full capacity? Let's maximize the investment we've already made before we go down the road of spending additional dollars. I think that is at the very top of the list. Again, that $20,000 to $25,000 a space for structured parking, that's a Colorado number, 100%, and you're looking at $85 per year per space for operations and maintenance. Communicating, education, and engagement, that's really critical, as all of you know. I think signage is a big piece of that, letting people know where they can park. Adopting a broader access management philosophy. I think I've talked a little bit about that tonight, so I'll spare you those details, but it is. I think one thing I haven't mentioned is one of the most important tools that we're not recommending as part of the study, but something you should be aware of, is the conversation about paid parking. That is your most powerful parking management tool. We're not saying the community is ready for it at this point, but down the road, you are very likely going to be. Again, it's something that your fellow communities are talking about. It is the #1 way to manage parking because it makes it less convenient. And it also, interestingly enough, studies have shown that there's a positive correlation between the implementation of paid parking and the economic vitality of communities. And I'm happy to share that. I didn't just make that up. There's think tanks that look at this all the time. And lastly, continuing progressive funding strategies, making sure that you're looking at public-private partnerships and other ways besides impact fees to fund additional parking investment. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly because I've probably bored you enough, but I will be available. I'm very happy to answer questions. And again, thank you very much for your time and your patience in allowing me to detail our study and process and findings.
Great. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we have been doing so far and what we plan to do in the future. We did start utilizing, our city staff started utilizing the license plate recognition software in April, and we're still working through the kinks, but it has been able for us to give a more robust enforcement to really get that turnover that we need. We did add some long-term lots to our parking publications, working for that education piece, and we are working with that private parking availability to see if private lot owners are interested in either leasing their space or allowing some public to park in those spaces to give us some additional parking. Some of the ongoing things that we are going to look at, and I've been meeting with city staff on this, is looking at alternate transportation. One of the best ways to have less parking is to have less people driving. Looking at those public-private partnerships, if we continue to see people propose different projects in downtown, when and if there is going to be structured parking, seeing if portions of that could be public and how we could utilize that or add on to that. Looking at education, looking at staff training, and really looking at branding. One of the things that we've learned from guests that are coming down here, because we do have such a long linear downtown, that often the parking is very hard to find, or it's not really intuitive to those that don't come down here regularly. So how do we make sure they know where the parking is available? This year, again, like I said, the license plate recognition, reviewing those street time durations, which we'll talk about in a minute. We did also look at other options, and I think you'd heard a little bit about our process. We did look at maybe adding some parking and doing some different things with some diagonal parking to maximize, but we heard very loudly and clearly that that was not a great idea. And so we were glad to take it out and kind of look at other options. But we will look for different long-term parking for employees, other places that employees could park. Looking at a website, we do have day passes, as you know, and so one of the things we want to do is make it easy for people to make parking decisions. If they want to stay longer in downtown, they could log on to a website, put their license plate in, buy that day pass, and be able to stay in our public lots all day without time limits. And evaluate the need for additional handicap spaces. And you will see on one of your documents, we have inventoried where they are and are looking at where more could be added. In 2018, we really want to talk about that first step in the parking study and create a specific parking mission and vision and how we're going to start managing this, which could be a touchstone for future decisions. Look at how we're going to manage the resources, evaluate the staffing needs based on that, create and implement an incentive program. And this is one of the things that you will see in our budget when we bring our budget to you, is looking for a budget for incentive programs to get folks to park a little bit more off-site and come into downtown, especially those employees that are working all day. Looking at different signage. And then now that we do have LPR and we are doing license plate recognition, how can we use that software and that tool to continuously be collecting data so we can continue to update council with new data? Establishing an organizational home for parking, downtown parking, is important. Right now, parts of it lie in the DDA, parts of it lie in public works, parts of it lie in community resources. So how do we kind of condense that into one streamlined, again, looking at staff training, looking at signage, and identifying revenue streams that can help support these efforts. So we did have some specific questions that we wanted to talk to council about, but maybe I should stop here to see if there's any questions before we move into that.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I guess my only question is, on the slide before, you said implementing a signage plan. or a parking signage plan. What is that exactly?
I think as we look at signage overall, how can we make that signage much more visible, and so you know where to go, even if you need to go down a few streets. I moved it down to 2019 because I think it's something we'll have to plan for 18 and fund in 19.
Because I've lived in the town now for a long time, and I just think a sign, like when you drive, no offense, Mayor, when you drive into the mayor's pub and you can't find parking at lunch, you're like, man, where can I go? You know, so a sign as you drive in saying, look at these places all around town, and then forcing employees out by having 2 to 3 hour parking. I just think that it's a no-brainer. You just do it, and that we don't have to build a parking garage, and we don't have to do street shuts down. Sure. Anyway, I just think it's a great idea. I'm all for it. No questions.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Kimberly, can you tell us what the LPR, how does that work again, the license plate recognition?
Can,
Okay.
I think. So it goes around and it literally almost takes a picture of the license plate and it does a stamp to know that the car is there. It will come back after that time limit has expired and see if that car is still there. So they'll know if it has overstayed the duration. So before that we were chalking tires, which you only have so much manpower and can get through so much, and then you can't do it when it rains, and sometimes people spray it off. So this just makes it a little bit more effective. And then, again, like Vanessa said, we don't keep that. We don't track. It's just kind of a stamp of this was here, and then it's gone.
Okay, great.
Actually, I went out with them one day. It lets them just get larger areas than they normally would on foot.
So like a line of cars or?
Yeah, we actually went through and we hit an entire street from 3rd almost to the senior center in a much shorter time frame than if they were walking.
Great. That sounds good. Thanks.
Councilmember Christensen.
I think this is first of all, thank you, because I think this is an excellent study of all the many details and different decisions. And I don't agree with everything in this, but I think it's an excellent tool and for us to have some further decisions. I am curious about the plans for where employees are going to park, because they're the main ones who need full-time parking. And I do think it's a great idea to have to change the limits, because you've analyzed where. I think that's a terrific thing, but my only concern is the employees who come here from a long place away, and they are going to have less places to park unless we do something. I know the city purchases a lot of parking lots or parking spaces from the church, but that's the city, and I don't know what the other businesses are doing.
We do. We sell the permits for the lots, and we still do have capacity there. So there are still available if people are willing to pay to make those choices to be able to stay longer. We are also encouraging people to go to the 8th and Kaufman lot, which is all day and has capacity that we found in the study.
Okay.
And that's where we are looking at those private lot owners to see if they would either be willing to allow public parking or if they had a certain price that they would charge, we could pass that on to folks that are looking to make other decisions. Yeah. One of the long-term strategies that I think that we should talk about, I know everyone is looking at the First and Main transit hub and what that will look like, and I think that is a huge opportunity for us to really use it as a hub when that is built, or as we are gathering ways, if it's a place where folks could park and then come up easily into downtown, especially if we look at things like enhanced bike share, if we look at faster headways on the RTT bus to use that type as a shuttle. So I think in the future as well, we're planning on where that next step's going to be as we hopefully continue to grow and thrive and bring more employees down, which we need. How can we get them up into downtown easier?
Yeah, but also, of course, that's intended for RTD riders, but some of whom would be shopping downtown, hopefully. But, well, what happens, though, when the place to the north of Cheese Importers turns into not a parking lot, but more retail? Then we lose a big parking lot there. I mean, This is a great study because it is trying to look forward, and of course it is. We don't know what's going to be happening in the future. We know a lot of things are going to change, and we know that the demographic of millennials have also a lot of them really would prefer to bicycle or walk downtown. But as the lady who spoke earlier, sometimes you want to take your kid on a bicycle down and get an ice cream. Sometimes you want to wear heels and a nice gown, and you don't really want to walk 5 miles in your high heels. So sometimes you want parking. Yeah.
I guess I'm going to weigh in a little bit. I think when that gentleman, Peter, talked earlier about his city in Canada with divided, the United States, we're like, our kids are 23rd out of 25th in fitness level. And the more we can train people and provide safe passages for them to ride and walk and stuff, the healthier they're going to be. It's funny. People will go down to Boulder and they'll go out to dinner. They'll park in that parking garage down there where you've got to drive 5 or 6 minutes just to get to the right level park. And then you're going to walk 2 or 3 blocks to your restaurant on Pearl Street. And nobody thinks anything of it. And yet here, just to walk, 50 yards across the 6th Street Plaza where there's tons of parking on the next street over, everybody's bent out of shape. I mean, it's kind of a perception problem. I mean, why are people, for the life of me, I can't understand why people don't enjoy walking more than they do. It's just, it's mind-boggling. I'm totally against investing money in a parking garage when we can invest money a lot more effectively in multimodal transportation. And I challenge everybody that really cares about transportation, please read that book, How Cycling Can Save the World, because there's case studies after case studies of cities that have actually separated bikes from cars, and the business community were totally against it, but it actually improved business in the downtown areas. It didn't decrease, it increased it. So that's my 2 cents. I think you're definitely trying to thread a needle here and doing a great job, and I totally support your traffic study. Councilmember Peck.
Thank you. 2 things. First of all, for the bimodal, on the TAB board, Phil Greenwald gave this excellent project update of citywide cycling plan to actually link all parts of the city, including downtown. I wish he would give that presentation to council. I don't think he's quite ready for it, but just for the cyclists, the city is working on that, and it looks like an incredible project. The other thing, Kimberly, for the employees who are parking in residential neighborhoods, et cetera, you had mentioned when I talked to you of working with employers to maybe as a benefit to employees to buy the passes for lots that would, because they're going to be parked there all day, and free up have you had that conversation with any employers? And if so, was that received at all very well?
So I think once we decide to, if we decide today to make some of these time limit changes, it'll be part of the package. And as we identify other lots that are private as well, we'll continue to do this. The hard thing for us is we don't necessarily know where people work when they're parking there, but we will make sure that we get it out to everyone that these are the options. And as we work to looking at ways to incentivize folks to park other places, that'll also be in part of that.
Okay, good. I think that's a good strategy to use too.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. First of all, I'm so excited that you did include the handicap parking in those hot spots, because as much as it's wonderful for people to bike and walk, there are some people who can't, and they want to go out to eat too, and you can't find those parking places very well. So I'm very excited that you've included that. I like the study. I accept the findings personally. I think that you have threaded the needle pretty well. Signs as to where parking lots are would be a big help for a lot of people. Not all of them have lived here all their life like me and know where the secret parking places are. So those maps or those signs would be very helpful, I think, especially to people coming from out of town. Also, the app. so that if you're staying longer than you thought you'd stay and could pay on that app, that's a great idea. So I like the study. I like the findings. I think you're going in the right direction. And number 3 here, direction on future approaches. I think that you've mentioned all the things we need to move towards, and we just have to figure out ways to fund those. That's the devil's in the details there.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, I accept the findings and would like staff to use this in the future. I would disagree with the mayor that I would say if you're having a multimodal plan, you have to have a potential parking structure somewhere in the mix. I love for people to ride their bikes. I love for people to be able to walk. But for those that can't or are having large groups that are unable to, they're not doing a goodnight ride, but they're doing, having family in town and they need to be able to find a place to park. Later on down the future, a parking structure might be warranted. It also would be good regarding the signage. I have a client that is on Terry Street, and the county purchased a lot there. And it says from 8 to 5 counting parking. But there's a restaurant close by that's, after 5 o'clock you can park there, but a lot of people still are, it's not clear that, it's kind of clear you can park there after 5, but it's not really clear you can park there after 5. Better signage not only for the DDA, the city, but our partners as well, to say, those lots can be freed up for those that are using vehicles. I would like to have more consistent time limits throughout the DDA, but the 2 to 3 hour zones need to be. Like tomorrow, I have a Visit Longmont board, which you're going to be at too, Kimberly. Hopefully, you're going to be at. That meeting starts at 9:30, and it can go to potentially 11 o'clock, 11:30. So I look for parking that's at around that. I'm going to be within a 3 hour parking area, and if I have to walk a block or 2 blocks, I'll walk a block or 2 blocks. I would agree with the mayor. It's amazing that people will go to Boulder and park and then go through all Pearl Street and what have you. But here, if you you can find a parking spot. The downtown is readily accessible by foot. It's pretty easy. It's got, as Councilmember Finley knows, you got to know where the spots are. And not having the future, the crystal ball. It's something that the DDA and our staff and the council are going to continue, and the DDA board, continually to look at to see what adjustments or tweaks can we make within this area so we can accommodate vehicular traffic, buses, and maybe a rail in another 100 years, but also bikes and pedestrians as well. You have to have it all. You can't exclude one from the other. So there you go.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, I wanted to wait till way ahead because I was a big part of this. I was involved every meeting that we had, and I would have to say that I would agree that the engagement level of this parking study was extremely high, not only from the stakeholders but also from the consultants, and how they just seemed really interested in doing this study, and they were really diligent about making sure we had the information we needed when we needed it. So, yeah, of course, I'm going to support the studies and findings because it's my fault it's there, so at least partially. I won't take all the blame, but at least I do know that it was a very robust process, and there were a lot of different scenarios discussed that really never really made it into the plan, and I think that's really kind of a testament to how open the options really are and where this can go in the future. So I want to thank Kimberly Horn as well as all the participants in the study sessions we had and the work sessions, and good job.
Thank you.
Councilmember Christensen.
I guess I'd like to comment on the fact that I live within walking distance of downtown, and I could easily do that, and yet it's real. You know, the bottom line is that most of us don't because we're lazy, and that's going to take some. You know, that's a matter of people changing their habits. That's a hard thing to do. And so that's why the incentives of some of these things to make it parking slightly more difficult might be an incentive. Although, you know, if you're lazy as me, then probably not. But what I'm suggesting is that we, one of the things we can also do that I've been pleading for a decade is to do what Denver did. Denver put in a mall, and it was kind of dead until they put in a free shuttle. And now it is thriving. And if we had a shuttle that went from, say, 66th to Prospect, or at least if we started it in downtown, this would really, I think it would really add to it. And it's another form of multimodal. The other thing, I really do want to emphasize the multimodal form, because I do think that's the future. And but I agree with Councilman Santos that we also need to think about somewhere down the line. I do think there's probably going to be a need for additional parking in a parking structure, and I don't want to lock that out of things. I do want to point out that most of us received a letter from Sharon O'Leary about parking by a certain company who shall remain unnamed. They already park their cars, their trucks, all over in Old Town. And we need to not have Old Town be the overflow lot. And right now, it is becoming that. Yes, it's true, if you go a block and a half, you can find more parking, or 2 blocks. But it's parking in a residential area where a lot of people don't have garages. So their only parking is on the street. So I want to try not to keep doing that. I do think it's a matter of perception, because I've talked to other people, and I think we need more parking. Other people say, I don't think there's a problem with parking. So I do think it's a matter of how far you're willing to walk and what your perception is. And, you know, that's very flexible. I guess that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I actually move that we accept the Longmont Parking and Access Study and approve and direct city staff to move forward with parking limit changes as presented.
Okay, it's been
Can
moved
I
and seconded.
add one thing?
Sure.
There's one slight change to the map that you have in front of you that I just wanted to make clear. There are 2 situations where it's on Kimbark, on the 400 block and 500 block, where spaces were all day, and they notoriously had been all day, and we didn't know why, and so we started talking with the businesses there. And it's actually because of the loading zone capacity for the glass shops, because of how they get their deliveries and when they come in, and they use these cranes. And so if they had to unload over other people's cars, it would be tough. And so we did have parts of those going to 2 hours. We've worked with both of them. Hillcrest, which now has 3 all-day spaces and 2 delivery spaces. Although that look changed on here, we would ask that that stay the same. And then in front of Slade Glass, there's 10 spaces. 5 of those would go to 2 hour as proposed, and then 5 would stay as all day to accommodate those deliveries that are both adjacent to their driveways.
You have not read back the motion, Mayor, so I would like to amend my motion pursuant to
What she said.
what she just said.
Okay, I'll second that. So let's vote. That passes 7-0. Thank you.
And then for the third one, I think I really hear that explore that multimodal.
Yes,
but always keep the other option on the table as well. Great. Thank you so much for your time.
You bet. Yeah, let's Let's take a 5-minute break because we've been going nonstop since 5:30. Okay, can we take our seats and finish our meeting, please?
I was going to say, I joke about a waffle bar, but it's a hot chocolate bar. Right?
Okay.
If we pay for it, like if my firm sponsors it, could we do it?
Yeah.
Like a waffle bar with ice cream?
Yeah, sure. Okay, can we move on to the discussion on future planning and development in the Terry Lake neighborhood?
Mayor Coombs, members of council, Erin Fosdick with the Planning and Development Services Department. I'd like to introduce just a couple other staff that will be available to answer questions. I'm joined by Joni Marsh, Director of Planning and Development Services, who worked on the State Highway 66 Framework Master Plan and Design Guidelines several years ago. Also, we have several staff from Public Works and Natural Resources that are available to answer questions primarily regarding drainage. We have Barb McGrain, Becky Doyle, and Chris Huffer. Oh, he moved, sorry. We also have Phil Greenwald, Transportation Planner here. We provided some information in your council communication about the State Highway 66 Planning and Environmental Linkages Study that's going on, and so if there are specific questions, Phil is working on that, is sitting on that technical committee and can answer questions about that project. I should also mention that there are a couple property owners from the Terry Lake area, and if council desires to hear their perspective or has questions for the property owners, I think they'd be willing to also come up and provide information. So with that, I'm just going to give some brief remarks, and then we'll look for questions and information from council. So really what we're here to talk about is what has always been known as the Terry Lake neighborhood. This area is an area that's been in the Longmont planning area for some time, going back several comprehensive plans. The boundaries currently are Highway 66 on the south, Vermilion Road to the north, Main Street or Highway 287 on the east, and 95th Street to the west. Historically, the planning area did extend even further north to encompass portions of Terry Lake, but over time that area has been scaled back to its current area. I also want to mention that a master drainage plan was done several years ago, many years ago, and that evaluated several options to deal with some of the drainage issues in this area, primarily the overtopping of Highway 66. And as a result of this, the city did construct a regional detention pond in this area. And as I mentioned, Chris is available to answer questions about that. There are still some additional drainage improvements that would need to be made in this area prior to any development occurring. And so some of the questions that the property owners have raised is, would council be amenable to looking at some additional mechanisms to help finance that? For example, a metro district, and so we can talk about that. In 2005 and 2006, the city entered into a public-private partnership to take a look at this area, and the result of that was the State Highway 66 Framework Master Plan and Design Guidelines. We provided a link to that plan in your communication, so hopefully you had a chance to take a look at that. We can, again, provide more details and information if you'd like. Really, that plan laid out sub-areas, a variety of land use options for each of those sub-areas. It included a proposed transportation network, a school site, a park site, and some really detailed information. Since that time, there have been a lot of changes in this area. There have been also many changes on city council, so that's one of the reasons that we were coming to you today, because this may be an area that you haven't had the opportunity to learn a lot about or think a lot about from a planning perspective. This area currently in the Envision Longmont plan is shown primarily as parks, greenways, and open space. A lot of this is a result of open space purchases made since the original plan was completed in 2006. During the Envision update, we did contemplate kind of the future of this area. It is one of the last remaining large vacant or developable areas in our planning area. But we didn't really know exactly what to do with it, and so it's currently designated as the Terry Lake mixed-use area and just refers back to the plan that exists. We have met with property owners several times since the Envision Plan was adopted to really talk about the future. We've had a lot of interest from other folks coming in and looking at the area, and so we think that now is the right time to start these conversations with council. Also, we're working on the land development code, as you know, and one of the questions we have is, as we're aligning our zoning code to better implement in the Envision Longmont land uses, what becomes of this area? There are 2 properties that are currently annexed to the city that are zoned mixed-use PUD with a Terry Lake overlay, and we're just not sure that that's the right kind of zoning moving forward, and so we're interested in council's feedback on that. So again, we're just bringing you this general information and hoping to get some high-level direction, primarily related to land use and zoning, among a few other things. So as I mentioned, this is one of the last larger remaining sites in our planning area. So it's really important that we do still strategically plan for this area. We're working on aligning the code, and so we need to determine if we don't have the Terry Lake mixed-use area as a land use, what might this be? Some options that we've thought about include maybe looking at this as a mixed-use corridor that would still help accomplish some of the mixed-use goals of the original master plan, but maybe give a little bit more flexibility to property owners and future developers and investors. In the meetings with the property owners, we have ascertained that there is still desire to have there is value in having the coordinated planning, but that the relatively prescriptive and maybe even somewhat restrictive design guidelines that exist may not be ideal at this current point in time. So we're here tonight to get general direction from you, answer any questions you have. We want to know more specifically, are you amenable to looking at a more generalized land use and subsequent zoning district for this area? Again, as this is one of the last remaining larger pieces, does council support not further purchasing open space purchases in this area, or do we want to continue to support Boulder County in purchasing open space in this neighborhood? And then again, since there are some rather large drainage improvements that will need to be made, would council be amenable to looking at some different financing mechanisms that we don't normally look at? Could property owners come in with that, and would council be comfortable at least conceptually entertaining some of those options? So with that, I have some maps if we need to look at them to orient you. There are several staff here that can answer questions, and as I mentioned, I think we have a couple property owners that would also be available to answer questions if council has them.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I'm aware of this area, and have actually met with a couple of the property owners in the past. I guess my overall first reaction, which is just that, a first reaction. One, I think we need to keep our powder dry, and I would rather see us keeping our open space dollars for the properties out east as the families become more willing to sell, or we can purchase their conservation easements. So I think that should continue to be our priority. I also know that that property is the last because, as you pointed out, there's drainage issues that aren't just the city's problem, that the property owners need to figure out how to get around that. And I don't think it's the city's responsibility to figure out how to compensate property owners to allow them to build there, unless they, just like the Village at the Peaks, they came to us with a proposal that said, hey, look, you guys are going to actually come out ahead. So at this point, I would not be interested personally in voting or encouraging city participation in fixing the drainage without some type of understanding of what's going to happen. So same thing with metro districts. If there's a proposal, I'm willing to listen, but at this point, just saying, yeah, let's turn it into a metro district. So I guess really what I'm saying is I'd like to just continue to see it the way it is with mixed use, but keep an open mind should the property owners come forward with a proposal, and just kind of see what they decide to do with it. But I don't view it as our problem at this point.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. just to piggyback on what Councilman Bagley said, as far as the drainage issue goes, I would be interested in helping them with some affordable housing dollars if they would put affordable housing in some of these 12,000 units that are proposed out there with some units that are for sale instead of just rentals, just to move it forward. But also this Highway 66 is definitely a gateway. So I'm interested in the PLE study for 66. Perhaps Councilman Moore, you're on that as well as Phil. Is there a timeline yet for when that study is going to be finished? Okay, thanks.
Mayor Coombs, members of council, Phil Greenwald, transportation planner with the Planning and Development Services Group. That study is planned to be wrapped up in early 2018.
Oh, that's pretty soon.
Okay. There will be some more stakeholder outreach that's happening in early 2018, so that'll be a piece of it as well. But they are working currently with current conditions and then working on alternatives. So the alternatives piece will come out this winter, and then they hope to wrap that up early 2018.
Okay, great, thanks. And I agree that it should be a mixed-use area. And the reason I was concerned about the PLE for Highway 66 is because for the same reason as County Line Road, we're talking about 12,000 units dumping maybe 2,000 cars on that road. And I know it's probably in a 15-year time period, but what we do to that Highway 66 for me is as important part of this whole build-out. And we have to keep that in mind. So I would be, I'm amenable to it being the mixed use separate, but I would like to hear from the property owners as well as to what they think.
Councilmember Christensen?
I would like to talk to the property owners that have, that are here tonight, but I would also like to hear from the property owners to the north of that who own farms and have been there for a long, long time. Without hearing from them, I don't think we should go forward because, I mean, in changing anything. I do think it could be mixed use. I think we have to be very careful that the mixed use is very high quality because it is a gateway. And I don't think we should really move forward with changing anything either until we've heard that report about how to fix 66. It's a wonderful road, but it's also a very hazardous road right now, and we're going to have to think of something to do to that and work with Lions and people to the east to make that improvement. So,
Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Aaron, are you still there? So when we're mentioning mixed-use land use here, the Terry Lake Overlay Zone is a mixed use today, but is it more prescriptive than our normal, what we'd normally classify as mixed use? Or is it, what's different about the Terry Lake Overlay?
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Moore, the Terry Lake Overlay is, I think it's fair to say, more prescriptive than the mixed-use corridor, for example, land use and envision or the other mixed-use land uses. Obviously, we don't have our new zoning code, so we don't know exactly what that looks like, but one of the things that we heard from the community and from council was that we needed to have, well, while having predictability, we also needed to have flexibility. If you look here at the, these are some excerpts. You know, this area is really divided into several sub-areas. You can see that here. So this is 95th. Over here is 287. And then the bottom here is 66. It's sort of hard to see here, but really what this shows is that within each of the sub-areas, there's a dominant activity that's identified, the types of uses that we'd expect to see, public space information, as well as some detailed design guidelines around building height and massing. So I would think it's fair to say that this is pretty prescriptive and much more detailed than a general mixed-use zone would be. And so certainly we require a concept plan when someone annexes and gets zoned, and those details are loosely spelled out then. But I think it's fair to say that this is more prescriptive than a general mixed-use zone would be.
Okay, thank you. So I guess when you go back to the questions you're asking tonight, I would have to agree with Councilman Bagley that we should be directing our open space resources towards the east. I'm not sure, I don't think I would support additional open space purchases in this area because it is one of our last major areas to work with. And also, when we look at how this would build out, it would be it's my opinion again, is that we would do this not as what we build today as a subdivision, but more densely packed, more people there, because I think that's kind of the way things are moving anyways today, is to be able to make it more affordable, to make it more livable and walkable, which is also mentioned, I think, in this Terry Lake overlay. So I'm not sure the Terry Lake overlay as it exists today would be something we should think about, or whether we should have another discussion about that. And what it really comes down to is where are the landowners landing on this and what they want to do and what they can propose that they bring to council so that the city gets what it wants and they get what they want. So,
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I would agree. I would need to see some proposals first, but I would be amenable to listen to what might be proposed. I don't see the need to change anything yet. It is a gateway. To have some sort of mixed use in there would be, I think, would be appropriate. But again, no, I haven't seen a proposal. I'm not amenable to going into negotiations with the county for any other additional open space purchases on in this area. Other than that, I think there are some great flood mitigation issues that need to be addressed, and how we go about working with the owners or whoever comes in. I don't know. As Councilman Bagley would say, I don't have the data. So, but if we have that later on with a proposal, it's kind of like with the last topic. You have to keep that open perspective of, well, we could put this there. There could be some affordable housing components here, what have you. But I think we're okay as right for right now.
So my question is, in a 100-year flood, you're going to have overtopping of Highway 66 if we do nothing. But other than that, shutting down Highway 66 for a few days, is there permanent damage to the road with that level of flooding?
I'll let Chris Huffer address that.
Mayor Coombs, members of the council, Chris Huffer with Public Works and Natural Resources. In doing this study, we looked at, as you know, this is not a FEMA-mapped floodplain, but this is inadvertent flooding from a very large area funneling down to a very finite point to cross Highway 66. And before we did our improvements with the pond that's built up there, there was 3 to 4 feet of flooding over the top of 66. With the improvements that we've done, it's reduced it down to about 6 inches. And it's really more of an access issue for emergency. Our storm drainage criteria manual requires that arterials and roadways like 66 have a passable area for emergency vehicles. And that's what's driving this right now, so that the water doesn't overtop. Damage to the road would actually be fairly minimal with the amount of water that we're expecting to go over now.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. My question is, do we have any sort of plans for flood mitigation in that area, or does it depend on what's proposed?
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Finley, there is a drainage master plan for the area, and part of the improvements is that the city constructed do implement part of that. There is a plan as the properties develop to continue to build out those improvements that would mitigate those impacts.
Okay, so we already have a plan. We just need to know what people want to put there, right?
There is a drainage master plan, and it, as properties come in to develop, they would propose to construct those regional facilities.
We would require them to be.
That is correct.
As the land comes in. I'm not a big fan of telling people what they can do with their land, but I am a big fan of having an overall plan, and I like the mixed-use plan because it has a lot of options. So I agree with my fellow council members that perhaps we should leave it the way it is.
Yep. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I'll put Dale on the spot now. We were talking earlier this year about, I think it's Spring Gulch at County Line, and that we're not going to build a bridge there. And if I remember correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that even at that point, that Spring Gulch would overtop County Line by 6 inches or so. And if I'm wrong, please correct me, because it sounded to me like at the time, even with emergency access, 6 inches is still an acceptable level on an arterial.
So Mayor Combs and Councilmember Moore, the exactness of any of these numbers is sort of beyond my skill level, but yeah, something in the range of 6 inches or less would not typically close down a road, certainly not to emergency access. We may close the road down for typical vehicular access just because we don't need a bigger problem on our hands. But so with regards to County Line Road, so the improvements that we're proposing to do with the Spring Gulch Trail will increase the capacity underneath County Line Road from what it is today at a couple hundred CFS to, I think, over maybe a couple thousand CFS. It doesn't, however, carry the entire 100-year flood, which we would intend to do at the time that we fully widen County Line Road to its full 4-lane width, which is still in the plan to ultimately happen. But we think incrementally we're making significant improvements to County Line. And on Highway 66, as Chris mentioned, the work that we have done, we believe, protects the city below Highway 66, downstream of Highway 66, if you will, to a level where it's essentially street flooding as opposed to damage to homes. Now, having said that, again, I can't predict the exact storm or its characteristics, but we think in combination with the improvements at Terry Lake Reservoir, which are getting underway with this fall, along with the regional detention pond that we built, we accomplished what we told the voters we would do with the bond money from the 2009 bond.
All right, thank you. I was just making a point of clarification there. So
sorry for the long answer.
Okay, well, a couple of people mentioned that they wanted to ask questions of the property owner. Councilmember Peck?
I just wanted to say that I do not support the Metro District or the open space, additional open space. I think we need to keep those dollars for the northeast. Thanks.
So I'll introduce Larry Jacobson as a property owner, and I don't know if there's other property owners that want to speak or if you're kind of speaking for the group. Okay, thanks.
One of the groups.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Larry Jacobson, 4100 East Mississippi in Denver, and I represent the group that owns Beaupre Farm. One of my partners, Jim Harmon, is here also. He may want to speak as well. Before the questions, I just wanted to clarify a couple of things with regard to the whole Terry Lake neighborhood. So I think maybe 30 years ago, there was a grandiose plan for thousands of acres of development going from 66 all the way up to and around Terry Lake neighborhood, or excuse me, Terry Lake. And at that time, I don't know the exact number, but let's say it was 3,000 acres in total, because it's a large area. We're down to 300 acres now. There's an $8 million price tag for the remaining drainage to satisfy the drainage requirements in the master drainage plan. So back in the day when there were 3,000 acres, it was very digestible. You know, that would be $1,000 an acre. Now we're at 300 acres, which is $23,000 an acre. And then of the 300 acres, only 140 are annexed, so that's $57,000 an acre. And of the 300 acres, even if everyone annexed, we're probably going to lose 60 acres for detention facilities. So those 60 acres will never develop. So, you know, I don't know how they could pay the fees towards detention, let alone any other, add any other value other than just being, in essence, open space for drainage. So where we are with this project, we're developers. We want to bring forward a development proposal, but because of the drainage, if you'll excuse the pun, we're dead in the water. We're underwater. And that's why we wanted to come here tonight to get some direction from council as to whether there are any creative ways to move forward, such as utilizing a metro district, such as having the city perhaps purchase some of the land for open space, but use it as detention, because of the $8 million, some of the money is for purchasing property. I mean, if we don't have a drainage solution in this area, then the property is not developable. I can tell you from, we've studied it backwards and forwards. So that's kind of where we are, and we're hoping that we can have a dialogue and a discussion about how to move forward and bring this greenfield development to the city, because otherwise it's not going to happen. And it's not something where prices increased over the next 5 years it would happen. We're talking about decades before it would make sense for this to happen. And in the meantime, the construction costs for the drainage would go up during those decades also. So,
Councilmember Bagley, did you want to ask a question?
I was just going to, thank you, Mayor Coombs. I was just going to, we've met, and I feel for you. It's just that it doesn't make economic sense. I mean, on one hand, asking, do you want to buy it for open space? But at the same time saying, well, if you don't do anything, we're not going to develop.
Well,
so I guess all I'm saying is I personally, and it sounds like others are willing to listen to ideas, but I'm an attorney. If you want to talk about DUIs or divorce, you know, I can sit here all day and I can give you legal advice, but you're the developer. So if you bring something back to City Council, I, for one, am willing to listen, and I think you hear from my fellow council members that we're willing to listen to proposals. But what at least I'm not willing to do, and it also sounds like they're not, is just subsidize your development without knowing what's in it for the city, other than just facilitating your development. So I think, yeah, go ahead, be creative, do your thing, and then come back. But I don't think we have the expertise to tell you how to develop your property.
I think what I'm hearing from the council is they want to see this area develop. Is that a fair statement?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we just have to figure out a way to finance the drainage, because it can't develop without financing the drainage. So, I mean, one of the other challenges with the drainage is that we're being asked to upfront the $8 million. We can't develop the property without having all this drainage infrastructure in, which is $8 million up front before there's a road or a water line or a sewer line or grading or anything else being done. So that creates another economic challenge. So, I mean, we can bring forth a proposal. I can tell you it's going to 100% entail utilizing a metro district to try to finance some of this development. The metro district would only include the property in Terry Lake. It would only include the 300 acres, or those of the 300 acres that are annexed. So there wouldn't be any other residents that would be asked to pay for any of this except those that are within that neighborhood. So, you know, I think that's reasonable and fair. But if we don't use creativity, you know, we're going to have really nice alfalfa farms on the north side of Longmont for the foreseeable future.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. In your data that you just gave us for the cost of this drainage, did that just include, maybe I wasn't listening carefully enough, but did that just include the properties that were already annexed, or did it include all the property owners? Was there a possibility that all the property owners there could share that cost?
if all the property owners annex, it would be $23,000 an acre. But of that, about 60 acres are going to be, they have to be used for this drainage. So they'll never develop. So they don't really add value to the equation. So it's if you utilize that math, it's really only 240 acres, and instead of the 300, so that raises the 23,000 to north of 30,000 an acre. But there are a number of properties that may not ever annex. We don't know what's going to happen with some of those people. We met with some of them. Some of them are kind of interested, but some of them really aren't, or they didn't respond to our queries. So right now we have 140 acres.
Okay. Thanks.
Councilmember Finley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I think what I'm hearing from my fellow council members is show us an idea, show us something that would enhance our community and how creatively we could help you with the drainage issue, and we're willing to listen. I'm not opposed to a metro district. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. But show us what's going to be there that would excite us, that would make us want to help you. And then we could move forward with it. We can't just say, oh, gee, we should give you $8 million to fix this drainage problem when we don't know what's going to be there. We need to see what's going to be there first.
In a lot of other jurisdictions, this would be considered regional detention. And it would end up being financed, at least in part, by the governmental entity that's responsible for it.
Give us some options, and we'll take a look at them.
Councilmember Christensen?
I'm curious about where the drainage thing is on this map, and whether a drainage, it would be helpful if Dale could come up, and whether an open space area that's mainly a drainage area would qualify as open space?
You all have a comment.
Do you have the master drainage plan?
I do not have the master drainage plan. I mean, I think you can see more clearly what's open space here, which might be helpful.
Sure, sure. Did you ask the question again, Polly? I'm sorry.
Okay. Show me where on this map the drainage area would be, the 60 acres of, and whether, can a drainage area be open space, really? I mean, capital O, capital S?
All right, so two things, and I know Chris Huffer's here. He probably knows this drainage plan better than I do, but as I recall, it had a series of detention ponds, all of which have some flexibility on sort of size and location, but I believe there was some up in this general area, and then another one down near the highway, and they were interconnected in order to really intercept the drainage that's coming from this area to the north and west of the city. So to go into it using city open space funds, I'm not sure that would fall in line with the ballot or the purpose of open space to go purchase it for that reason.
Right.
Honestly, if you're going to purchase it, it would probably be a storm drainage acquisition if that is its intended purpose. We also know you can be creative with these detention ponds, or like we are up on the one on Main Street where we have a ball field down in there and those kinds of things. So those can be sort of designed into the design of an overall development.
So it could be like a community park, part of it.
Yeah, so Dry Creek Community Park also functions, a portion of it as drainage coming down along the creek through there as well. So it's not unheard of for it to be incorporated for multiple uses. In other words, it just doesn't have to be a big open spot with nothing.
But not using open space funds.
I don't want to say never and no, but my first reaction would be it doesn't seem to line up real clearly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Can I just point out, right about here, I think, there's a pipe that goes under Highway 66 and then ends up discharging down in the Oligarchy Ditch. So that pipe is, I think, 42 inches and that pipe is like a little straw that's taking 7,000 acres above it. So all the drainage from 7,000 acres above it is coming down into that little straw, and that's what the challenge is. That's why we're having this conversation.
So, Mayor, Council, if I can jump in, one of the things when we talk about a broader public investment, we've made an investment in that area in terms of the work that we did at Terry Lake. That was about a $4 million investment. And so, not being an engineer, I'm going to look at Dale, the flows that were coming, the mapping changed once we made that investment, and we created that, which lessened the amount of water that we have in our plant, correct?
And Council, you may remember, we were in front of you talking about this very issue a couple of times over the last couple of years. And again, our focus with the drainage bond dollars up in the Terry Lake neighborhood was to protect the existing city south of Highway 66. Now, in saying that, it obviously did intercept some of the flows that are also coming into the neighborhood north of 66, but it did not and was not intended to solve all of the drainage issues north of 66. And I think that's what Mr. Jacobson is saying, and I think he's accurate that that $8 million price tag, frankly, is a bit old at this point. I don't know if that's current or not. Right. That might be a bit of wishful thinking, but I think the idea of a metro district can make a lot of sense. To me, that's why you have metro districts, when you have some exceptional costs that are impeding the ability of a property to develop. But I think the city's ability to continue to work in phases as ideas and projects are brought forward is certainly something we're ready to do and would want to do.
Councilmember Christensen? Okay. All right.
So, Mayor, Council, one of the things, and one of the reasons we wanted to come back on this, because this was an area of change and envision, and as we start pulling all of this together, we wanted to do a quick check with you all. I think we have direction. You all need to vote on it. I don't know if there's anything else.
Well, I think everybody's, willing to listen to future proposals, and maybe even the Metro District might be a good idea. But like Bonnie said, without some way to figure out, like with the mall, it's like money in but more money back. It was, you could make financial sense on how the investment would pay for itself over the long run, but or potentially. But here it's not clear to us yet that. It sure might be. At some point, maybe 5 years, the city might say, "Geez, we really need to build a lot more housing and apartments, and we really need this thing." So, but I guess right now it doesn't sound like this council is at that point. At this point, yes. I don't know. Is there any other property owners here tonight that want to come and talk? Sir.
Of this particular area?
Yeah, I live at 1512 Fleming, which is just south of the circle.
Okay.
4 houses south.
Well, are you an owner of this property, the Terry Lake property that we're talking about?
No, I'm in the Fleming and Burton.
Okay. Well, we're just talking about the Terry Lake property.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Jim Harmon, 1500 West Hampden Avenue in Sheridan. I'm Larry's partner. I guess in this partnership, I'm sort of the development guy, the construction guy. My company actually right now is building out the Fox Meadows condominiums on Road 1. So I'm pretty familiar with Longmont and what costs are up here, what the market's like. A little perspective on this issue. Dale and his staff and the city's made a great investment in this area with us, going back almost 15 years now, 14 years. And that investment covered the major issue. It took what was a 3 or 4 foot overtop and took it down to 6 inches. The remaining 6 inches is a huge issue because our development has to, and our development, actually the piece right next door to us, take 100% of the brunt of that water. No other property has to cover it. And that cost of $8.5 million, as Dale said, is very stale. My development costs and construction costs today are effectively double what they were just about 8 years ago. And that study is now six or 7 years old at least. So you can guess that $8 million is not getting this job done. An interesting thing that came up in this conversation tonight, and Dale's probably going to shoot me right down on this, but if that 6 inches were allowed to stay, or that 6 inches went down to 3 or something like that, you know, the economics might change. But the problem is to have basically two properties that are 140 acres plus or minus bear the brunt of this entire drainage, to solve this entire drainage problem, is an economic impossibility. That's pretty much the end of the discussion. And so we can never bring a plan forward because no one is going to invest the $250,000 or more it takes to put forward the kind of comprehensive vision that you want to see for a development, knowing that there's this albatross in the room that's probably now $12 or $15 million. It's just that simple. The direction we need is something that can get it, and maybe it's not an investment of the city's money at all, but a metro district and maybe some change in the development standards. But that's really what this boils down to. It's not a big, a massive change or a massive subsidy or a massive investment on the city's part. That's.
Councilmember Finley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Maybe what we need to do then is study what are the possibilities and how this drainage could be paid for. We don't have enough data to make a decision. So if we had more data, I'd feel more comfortable making a decision.
Okay, Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. And I guess I feel for you, right? And I am all for you developing your land, but again, as Councilmember Finley said, bring us some ideas. But I can't see. I mean, I look at you, and what I'm thinking as you're talking is, how is that the city's problem? Meaning, if it's not economically viable for you, it's not economically viable for the city. And if it's, and I would not, changing the development standards so that future development will be flooded so developers can develop doesn't make sense.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
yeah. So what I'm hearing is, so I mean, it's got to. I'm not opposed to a metro district, but I'm absolutely opposed. What I don't want to do, and I guess I'm telling staff, is I don't want to have a lot of talks about this particular area unless I've seen the developer, go through the motions. It's like when people come into my office, they say, Brian, I don't have any money. I want you to represent me, and I always say, well, I make 10%. So it's a $5,000 retainer. Either you come up with $5,000 or I personally have to come up with $4,500. So if you don't care enough about your family to pay me, why should I? So I guess the challenge for you is bring something to us showing what you want to do, showing what risk you're willing to take, and if it's an idea that's viable, we can move forward. But right now, just saying anything other than bring us a plan, there's really nothing.
I understand that. I get that. And I'm just, for starters, we funded that drainage study to start with. I mean, us and a couple other property owners. It was not we, and we have significant investment in the area already. We were one of the prime movers in the corridor plan. I mean, we paid for all of those things, only to come to this sort of, okay, now we've got $9 million of largely regional improvements, mind you. We're not talking about the drainage that we create. We're not talking about water from our property that is creating this problem. This is water that's coming from other properties onto our property. So, council member, we're not asking for something to you to help solve a problem that we created, right? So that's the first part of it. And the second part is we understand all that, and I think staff does too. Maybe we can work with staff and come up with an idea, but I think absent some direction from staff, maybe that, okay, here are some things that might be viable. I don't think we're going to get to the point of bringing you a plan because it's just too expensive to bring something forward on on a notion that, gee, maybe they'll buy this. And so I don't know how we solve the problem. I really don't. When this was going to be, even when we started this property was, the master plan envisioned 700 acres plus or minus in the master plan, and now we're down to 140. So you can see where the whole problem comes in. So if we really want to see the neighborhood develop, it has to be in a sort of collaborative manner, some way. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mayor, I think I'm going to try to circle us back to the part of the question was, and Erin's going to go over what she heard from you all. So as we look at this as an area of change within Envision, we wanted to talk to this council about it because this council hasn't, as a whole, had that conversation. So I want Erin to go over the direction in terms of what she heard from you all as we look at the land development or the planning for this area in the future.
Mayor and members of council, I think what we heard tonight is that there's a lot of drainage issues and that we're not going to solve them right now. But I think what staff's takeaway is, and what we can share with the other property owners in the area, is that council is willing to look at proposals that come to them as additional properties annex in this area. It sounds like you would still be interested in having some type of mixed-use zoning, but that doesn't necessarily have to be with a Terry Lake overlay. I think what I heard from council is that you like the mixed-use component of the plan, but you'd be open potentially looking at other options that are mixed use. So I think what I take away from that is that as we're looking at updating our zoning code and our land development code to better align with Envision, we could look at other options for these properties, and other properties that choose to try to annex to the city could look at different options for zoning. The other thing that I think I heard is that council isn't generally supportive of Boulder County requesting additional open space purchases in this area. And then finally, keeping track of what's going on with the PEL, and council may be supportive of some different financing techniques, including a metro district, depending on what the proposal is. So I think with that direction, we'll continue to work with the property owners as proposals come in and look for creative solutions. And if there are proposals on the table, we bring those back to City Council.
Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well.
Thank you.
Councilmember Christensen?
I think what we said was that we didn't want the city to spend any open space money, not the county, but that's a small point. And I think what we are not really interested in as a city is subsidizing private property for development when they bought land knowing it had an issue, and now they need to fix that issue, but they want us to help them. Although I'm open to the idea of us helping them to some degree, because I do think if we want it to be developed, it seems fair that we be willing to at least help to some degree to help them with their drainage problems.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor, the only thing I wanted to add, and Councilmember Bagley made the comment he's not interested in anything that impacts life and safety issues. I just wanted to clarify, not only in this case, but any development, that is core to what we have to do as an organization. And we have a moral and an ethical responsibility to ensure that we're looking at the life safety issues as we're reviewing these applications. And I can assure you that we won't bring something forward to council that would endanger the residents or visitors of our community.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Bagley?
And Mr. Dominguez, I wasn't implying that. My point was that ignoring the 6 inches isn't an option. So right. that was my point.
I get it. I just wanted to make sure that we threw that out there.
Okay, should we move on to the update on the water sewer?
members of council. Dale Rademacher, General Manager of Public Works and Natural Resources. So we're going to switch gears here a little bit as Becky and Bob and staff come down to join me. So we're going to switch from storm drainage over to sanitary sewer and that sewer fund. So get your head turned around on that issue. One of the things I wanted to just make clear to the council is that, the city of Longmont it has a long history of investing and reinvesting in its public utilities to the point where our citizens can rely on those day in and day out. Frankly, they know the sewers are going to work, they know the water's going to turn on, they know the lights are going to be on. And so I think that is part of why people enjoy being here in Longmont, is frankly that reliability and the quality of those services that they get, which is, in my head, one of the core responsibilities of municipal government to do. And so tonight, we don't have a crisis in the wastewater utility, but instead what we want to talk with you about are some sort of best management practices, everything from how you maintain those assets to how you finance that and how you have a long-term vision on how you are maintaining responsibly that utility so that it continues to provide the services that citizens and businesses rely on. And so all we're going to chat with you about tonight, we're going to give you a little bit of background. We're going to talk about some of the financial cost drivers, both positive and negative, that have and are continuing to impact this utility. We're going to look at some of the financial options on planning, and then sort of look at your direction. And at the end of the day, at the end of our presentation tonight, what we're ultimately looking for is whether the council supports some very modest, almost cost of a living type of rate increases in the wastewater utility. And we're going to give you a lot more information on that, but the bottom line is that a predictable and very modest, in the range of 2 to 3% rate increases are probably ones that are better adjusted to and better planned for at the family level, at the household level, as opposed to big jumps. And so that is one of the things we want to talk with you about tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over. Oh, there he is. I'm going to turn it over to Bob, and he'll take you through, and then Becky's going to talk to us about some financial numbers.
Bob Allen, Public Works and Natural Resources. Financial cost drivers. I know some of you were on council in 2012 when we talked extensively about some of the changes that we had that were mostly regulatory drivers for the wastewater treatment plant. Back at that time, we had a permit that gave us more rigorous ammonia standards than what we'd had at that time. Not only lower standards, but a little tighter averages to work with through the week and the month. So we had lower standards and the need for a little more precision, and we couldn't do that with the existing plant. So we set off, you approved back at that time a capital package and a ballot initiative actually to finance the upgrades to the plant, which were pretty extensive. And tonight, Becky reminded me is maybe a night of celebration, because we are really substantially complete with that work now, and in fact should have it started up this fall and certainly by winter time. So we do have more work to do there. We don't know exactly what it's going to be. We expect to have new limits for phosphorus, which we don't have yet, but those will precipitate yet another wave of improvements. We are hoping they're not as significant as what we've had to do, and that we can leverage some of the existing facility. But during the course of those projects, we also took advantage of opportunities to improve resiliency of that site. We had to repair the embankment with the St. Vrain Creek to fix flood damage. And we also took advantage of a lot of different technologies to improve efficiencies at the facility as well. For example, we're using centrifuges instead of the old belt presses for dewatering. They cost a little bit more, but our annual operating cost should go down from about $700,000 into the $400,000 to $500,000 range. We're able to dewater to higher level and have less solid leaving this plant site. So if you open up any major national publication, particularly on the weekend, these are the types of headlines you're going to typically see. They're pretty common, and a lot of governments are in angst, particularly local governments, about the need to renew aging infrastructure. It's not in our nature yet in the utility business to have a full financial plan to renew all assets at the end of their life cycle. So Longmont has taken a different path, starting really more than 10 years ago, but my involvement has been over the last 10 to 15 years with it, is to actually have a good asset plan for the utility. That includes proactive maintenance, and it also includes having renewal projects. The challenge with that is that you're not talking about a 5 to 10 year planning cycle. You're really talking about more like a 10 to 20 year planning cycle. And so when Dale led the department through a strategic plan back in around 2000, that was what they set off to do, and it's taken time to get there, but I think that we have a good plan. Having worked through a number of master plans, maintenance plans, renewal plans, and now financial plans, I think we have the opportunity to continue on the path we have been. But that path isn't cheap. That path requires investment up front. We think it's an investment a lot of other utilities aren't making, and we see evidence out there through a lot of, both through publications and through our conversations with a lot of utilities. So this is something that we've done. It certainly does drive our costs, but we think that it also mitigates those higher expenses later on as things fail catastrophically or you can't meet permit limits. So in 2012, we showed you this image, which I would have loved to have updated, but they don't have yet a new image of our new construction. So this image showed the dates of all the infrastructure at that wastewater site, ranging from the 50s. Really every decade's covered here starting back in the 50s. What it doesn't show is it doesn't show all the buried infrastructure on the plant site, some of which may have come back from the 1700s. Well, at least, you know, maybe earlier in the 1900s. So there's some pretty old stuff there, and we're surprised to find what we do at times when we dig it up. So this has been something, once again, in 2012, you approved with some of this infrastructure renewal that we didn't even fully know the extent of it, but we've done a lot of that work and taken advantage of these projects to do that. So that's been electrical systems on site, plumbing, pipes, concrete that corrodes, demolishing some of the outdated process and making way for new stuff. So we put a lot of work into that, and I wanted to show you some pictures of what's taken place over the intervening years. This is a new clarifier that was under construction last year. The purpose of this is to improve our treatment for ammonia. This is a new aeration basin, same thing, really related more to the treatment for ammonia on site. New dewatering building. This hosts the facilities that will allow us, you know, hopefully over many, many years to reduce the costs of hauling liquid from that site. Better technologies. This is a headworks building where we have improved grit and solids removal coming into the plant. Better, more reliable, easier to maintain technology. It costs more, but it's cheaper over the long term to maintain. Different various projects on the plant site, improving infrastructure and renewing different components and pieces and parts. I could go on, and I won't on this, but anyone wants to see the plant site or wants a tour, by all means contact me and I'll take you down there.
It's fascinating. I've done it.
You have, multiple times. So what we haven't talked a lot about that is still a major need in our sewer utility is the system away from the plant, and that's all the pipes that collect sewer from residential properties and commercial properties and takes it down to the plant site for treatment. So we have steadily been working on this. It is definitely an aging system, and it's one that's expensive to maintain. We have a lot of root penetrations in that system that we have to annually clear. We have a lot of grease buildup at some level. Even with good pretreatment programs, you're going to have that, and that requires a lot of maintenance. And then just deterioration of a pipe that's in a very aggressive, corrosive environment. So this is an ongoing project for us. Now, over the last year, since 2012, we've been able to really take advantage of good construction rates during a recession and low inflation. Unfortunately, those days are over, and now the cost of labor, the cost of contractors to come in and do this kind of work is definitely going up for us, and pretty rapidly, as we even have difficulty sometimes finding contractors who are available in a reasonable time frame. This shows all the collection system in Longmont currently. You can see it just about in every street out there. And this is what it looked like in the 70s. So this is about 131 miles in the 70s by the end of the 70s. And this is about 350 miles here. So we've added a lot to the system, and a lot of what has been added since the 70s is already now coming due for renewal. So we still have some old system that we have to renew in older parts of town where it's just harder to get in to renew it, and we try to coordinate that with other projects, but there's still a lot of work here to be done. We've shown this to you before. I think you're pretty aware of what we've done, not only in our asset planning, but our strategic planning and moving toward really a right-sized utility with an optimal O&M cost. We, back in 2000, I think when Dale first initiated our strategic planning in the department, we had staffing just for the sewer utility at about 59. Our low point was in 2012 at 33. We've had additions just for growth in the city. We've also had a lot of project management need since 2012 because of the flood and these renewal projects. I would expect that this is pretty stable. We might see it pop up to around 40, but I would imagine that that's probably not going to go up much more than that for quite a while. We've spent a lot of money on automation with all of our facilities in the sewer utility, and that allows us to operate that facility unattended at nights and with really only one operator on the weekends, and then operations and a maintenance staff on the weekdays. But it's pretty lean operation, but it's a very effective one. We haven't had any major call-outs, and we have a very low call-out record because of that automation, and we haven't had any exceedances of our permit limits. So it's been a good investment in those facilities, that equipment, and one that I think will pay off or continue to pay off over time. So with that information, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague and financial whiz, Becky Doyle.
Good evening, Mayor Coombs and members of council. So all that work that Bob's group has done on controlling costs and bringing down staffing levels and all of that has translated into some costs. So this is a 10-year historical look at our expenses in the sewer fund. So you can see a lot of the benefits of the improved effectiveness of some of those process changes, and some organizational changes that have gone on in Public Works as well, as we have, decreasing and even flat costs through about 2012. Then in 2013, you see a little bit of a jump. There's a couple of things that are going on there. There were additional costs related to the flood, including some prolonged emergency pumping due to a line being out over on Main Street. Additionally, in 2013 and in 2015, we had issuance costs from putting out this debt here. So those are some things that kind of led to some short-term increases in the costs there. But overall, if you sort of do a trend line from 2006 to here, there's not a huge increase, but we are looking at something on the order of 2.8% annually as an average increase, which is pretty close to, you know, what we use as a planning target of 3% annual increases. The other thing that you'll probably notice in here is that we went from having this little skinny green line of debt service in the mid part of the 2000s, where this was approximately 5% of our annual spending, to this monster here, which is about 25% of what we spend on an annual basis. So just keep that in mind. We'll come back to that a little bit later. But we are looking at a lot of those improvements to make the operational improvements have been very capital intensive, and we will continue to pay for those through 2035. Also, you can see that we have increased our focus on renewal, and to be fair, there is a flood project that made it into the renewal project right here. But that little purple line represents the money that we're putting into rehabilitating the collection system. So we're ramping up that investment, as Bob mentioned. So all that being said, with that intensive capital, we have still been able to provide an excellent value for our residents, and so you know this slide pretty well. And at this time, usually we include trash, but due to recent service changes, it's been hard to get an average cost on those, so that's not included here. So this is where we're sitting, you know, with an average bill, assuming, you know, average levels of use of, you know, just under $150 there, which is very competitive with our neighbors. And we know that we're looking at water rate increases that'll add about $4 to that bill. We also know that our neighbors are adding similar amounts, with Loveland looking at something like a $10 increase, and Boulder at about $5 as well. So we're in line there, and continuing to provide good value for our residents. So that big green guy. So why have we issued all of this debt? Well, we had those big projects to do, and as we've talked about with you recently, meeting new regulations is a cost that can be shared between the current ratepayers and the future ratepayers. So it increases our intergenerational equity to do those kinds of things with debt. We have had 3 issuances of bond debt, all approved by voters, and so you can see the amounts there. And at the end of this year, we're just over $46 million in principal balance that we are still going to be paying back for the next 20 years. So one thing that is sort of driving you know, a need for perhaps a small rate increase is debt service coverage. And you might hear us talk about that and go, well, what does that mean? And so basically, it's something that bond rating agencies look at in our financial documents to see how easily we can make the bond payments for the bonds that we're saying we're going to make payments on. So, and there are a few different ways that those things are calculated, but essentially it's you take revenues, subtract out what it costs you to operate the system, and then just divide that over your debt payment. I'll go into that in a little more in a moment. So having a high debt service coverage ratio allows us to have excellent bond ratings, as we have traditionally have, which in turn gets us better interest rates, leading to, you know, lower overall costs for these kinds of improvements. So here's a bunch of very small numbers. One thing that we have been concerned about in our, you know, looking forward in our cash flows is that our planning target for our debt service coverage, we're not meeting that in 2019. Now, I do want to make a distinction between the debt service coverage ratio that we use as a planning target, which is calculated over our current year's debt payment, and then there's one that we're legally required to meet as part of our bond covenants, which is calculated differently using the maximum annual debt service from the entire life of the bond. So we are meeting the legal requirement easily. We're not in danger of not meeting bond covenants, just to be clear. But we're not meeting our coverage ratios in 2019 and then in a couple of years out here. We like for this number to be 125%, and we're looking at 107. So the reasons for that have a little bit to do with one sort of one-time expense where we are looking to replace our utility billing system. So there's a spike in our operating costs that year. So that's something that is impacting it. And then this year is actually quite close. We also know that we are going to have some additional information about the phosphorus removal, our new permit in the next few years. And so there will likely be a large capital project in the 21 to 22 range that may also impact this. We've got an estimate in there now, but we'll have better information about that within a couple of years. So the other thing to notice here is that we're not meeting our required reserve over the next several years, which would require us to either cancel capital projects or otherwise reduce operating costs. So what we are recommending is, in order to keep up with that gradual inflation of operating cost, is to implement some rate increases around the order of 2 and 3%. So 3% in 2018, 2% in 19 and 20. So what that does is just keeps up with that 2.8% annual average increase and allows us to get to that point in about 2021 where we're going to have more information about an additional capital need. So, and then with those increases, we're easily meeting our planning targets for debt service coverage, which allow us to maintain our excellent bond ratings should we need to issue any more debt. Questions on this giant wall of numbers?
No, it makes sense. So we want to keep our debt service ratio, between the 125 and 150 to keep our good rating. And, it costs money to do these big projects.
Right.
Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. So in 2019, we're seeing a spike in operating and maintenance costs. Can you tell us what that's about?
Right. So that's primarily due to the replacement of our utility billing system, which in the sewer fund will cost just over $1 million, we think.
So it's $4 million worth of software. If we take water, wastewater, electric, and trash.
Yes. 6 million, I think, is.
Well, it's probably not evenly distributed, but
yeah.
Based on the size of the utility.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's unevenly distributed, but yeah, we're looking at $6 to $8 million for that piece of software. Yes, citywide. Sewer fund would pay about $1 million.
Wow.
So Sandy can answer. Sandy can answer the technical questions.
Seems like it's way out of line.
So just to mention that, and I think Sandy can probably come down and clarify it further. But when we got our current banner system, which is, that's pushing at least 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. I think we were in the $3 to $5 million range then. And so, does it seem incredibly expensive? Yes, it does. However, the critical nature of being able to send a bill that's accurate and timely is essential. And so, I can let Sandy talk more about the importance of that, but I absolutely support and understand the need to do that. Do I like the idea of having to spend a lot of money to renew a system that's no longer being supported? Yes. That hurts, but at some point you need to make those choices. So.
Mayor Coombs, members of council, Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager. Also, we have a pretty big process for the CIS system. So as you may know, our current utility billing system is shared with Fort Collins. Fort Collins is going through the same kind of process that we are, so is the City of Loveland. Estes Park is somewhere out there, although we're trying to figure out exactly where their process is. We are following along with these other cities in order to try to make sure that we can be as efficient and cost-effective as possible. So likely, if we end up with the same system, which is the way that we are certainly looking at it, making sure that Longmont's needs are taken care of, we would be able to do cost share, as we do on today's system. But we're watching where they're going. I think what's important is to have the money ready to make the investment. We don't have any RFPs. All we have is what has been paid for by other municipalities for their CIS systems at this time. We're in the gathering of the requirements right now. Ian from Utility Billing is in the process of doing that. And you will see, in your next budget, some folks to help with that process. And so Public Works is planning for that replacement. It doesn't mean that that's how much we will spend, but we want to be prepared to make sure that we get the system that's going to work for all the utilities. The other thing I wanted to mention, the cost difference between what you're seeing in Public Works is that the other portion is the LPC portion as well, because this does cover all utilities with the exception of broadband. Our hope is that the system could also bill for broadband. Happy to answer any questions so far.
Councilmember Finley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I kind of dozed off there for a minute. No, I'm just kidding. In the explanation here, it said decline in manufacturing. Actually, we're bringing manufacturing in that hasn't been in the city for a while. Did you take that into consideration as well? Okay. The other thing is, I love all your graphs and all your figures, but the one that I didn't see that I'd really like to see is the trend line for rates for our customers over the last 10 years. What did we charge 10 years ago, and what are we charging now? I haven't seen that graph, and ultimately we're responsible for those people. So I would like that information sometime, if you could get that to me. I don't like raising rates.
So on the large customer, I'm assuming you all were thinking about, so Smuckers. Smuckers is actually not on our system. They are on the St. Vrain Valley.
St. Vrain Sanitation.
St. Vrain Sanitation District, so they're not on our system.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Councilmember Christensen?
I applaud you for doing this long-term maintenance thing. I can't understand how other municipalities would not. It's like buying a house without ever thinking that you need to replace the roof or, the furnace, whatever. So this is something we really must do. And when you look at that map, which I just love about, you see that periodically this city has invested in everything, and we have to keep doing this. And I do think that, although nobody wants to raise any more rates, it's what we have to do, I think, in this case. I'm wondering, okay, this is exactly what I wanted to see, was the average monthly bill would be $1 more. That's it's okay. When people only hear percentages and they don't know what it is, they get very bent out of shape. But of course, we've been increasing rates for all kinds of things, and people are very tired of hearing it, and we are too, but we have to do this. So I'm a little, the one thing I'm concerned about is the amount that this is mostly driven by the debt service, and I know we had to do that bond, but I'm concerned with this, with all the things we're bonding right now, and how we might wind up in dire straits because of all the things we're bonding. So I understand how we have to do this, and I'm going to vote for it, but I really worry very much about bonding so many different things that then with the debt service drives everything else we're doing.
We're not bonding anything tonight. This is just to keep the previous bonds we've already approved, to keep the debt service above that.
Yes, I understand that, but nevertheless, it's the driving force.
If I could add just one quick thing to the discussion. And it is sort of a unique phenomena that's going on in not just Longmont, but almost every water and wastewater utility. And that phenomena is a lowering of the per capita use of water. So on the one hand, that's a good thing. It's a great thing, right? We want people to be frugal and to use less water. And we have a lot of fixed costs. And so when you're running any business, whether you're selling candy bars or you're selling water, if the public is buying less of your product, and it's a good thing, and you're actually encouraging them to do that, those lines start to cross. And so as the city continues to mature and approach build-out, we are going to need to stay on a path of maintaining these systems and not rely on, this new and expanding growth, which has sort of been the history of the city. We have been able to rely on that. I think a time will come where current ratepayers are going to be tasked with that. And so we're going to start to look more like the cities in the Midwest and the East Coast that have sort of reached their build-out and are struggling with it now, because I think they did not make those decisions in a timely manner. And now they are faced with what appear to be insurmountable challenges for their communities to meet. And, staff's obligation to you and to the public is to be as efficient as we can in operating these systems and to deploy technology and to lower our staffing and do everything we can to appropriately run and operate the systems. At the end of the day, though, it is an incredibly expensive operation to run and very capital intensive, which is different than, say, the general fund. And I just think that's a phenomena that's going on that sort of gets lost in the equation at time if we don't sort of recenter on that and know that that is what's happening out there.
Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. I guess a couple of thoughts. I mean, first of all, without question, other than roads, water, sewage, trash, and electric. That is why the seven of us exist. No other, ideology, politics, tuffles in the paper, sewage, trash, water, electric, and roads. That's really what it's about at a local level. But there is a political component to this. Elephant in the room. A, it's an election year. B, every 2 years is an election year. Right now, when you talk to just as we see the graphs, that were presented tonight, I don't think most people in Longmont understand what our electric rates were. I just got back from New York City, and the cost of I joked pulling into Wendy's. I paid $13 for a large burger, large fry, large Diet Coke, and a large chocolate Frosty. Twice that in the state of New York, right? And we could throw up all these costs and say, oh, look at all the costs everywhere else. I don't care. I live here, So increasing my Wendy's to the point where I say, well, it's, at least it's not as high as New York, doesn't help me much. And I think that most people in Longmont, they've become fatigued. At least the 5.5 years I've been on council, we've done a lot of rate raising. And it's always, we need this. We need this. The federal government requires this. Our water is, then we're asking for a Windy Gap vote and a public utility vote. And when I look at that $35.80 for 2017, when I joined council, here's some political fodder for YouTube. I think it was like almost half that. It's yeah. So going from 25 to 35 in 5.5 years, that's a lot, And so it's not just, it's another $1.07 or it's another 74 cents. If it's always an incremental increase of, well, we can do another 74 cents. If I'm a senior that's on a fixed budget and we go from 25 to 35, and now we're talking about going from 35 to 38, that's a big deal. It's a big deal. So a couple of things that come to my mind. I guess I would like in the future So it reminds me, the same feeling I'm having now is the same feeling when I'm working with my employees and they're wanting raises, right? And essentially what I did was I said, you know what? I don't want to talk about it anymore. We're going to do it every October. Now, in this case, I'd suggest we do it every December, the month after the election, and we actually have everybody look at what increases are coming in our utilities. And that way, every year we can talk about it without dealing with a political element. There's no surprises. The other thing that I think we should do is, every year there's inflation. Every year we're going to have to plan for the future. And so my question is, why isn't that in our budget? Meaning, let's plan for it. And what makes me think about this is I've got 2 children in my life. One needs a quarterly steroid injection, and we take her in, and she gets steroids every 3 months to treat a medical condition, and it is hell. She screams, she yells, the doctor has to hold her down, and mom and dad are crying, this is terrible. The other is a boy who has to take human growth hormone every day, and yeah, he cried and screamed for 3 or 4 days, and now he just gives it to himself, and we set the alarm, and you say, hey, Jordan, have you injected yourself? And it's just part of life, right? And so I think a lot of this is, setting public expectation. And right now, I think we are doing a very poor job as a city of setting expectation. And the rates have just gone, like I said, through the roof. And whether or not it's avoidable or not, I don't think that our citizens care. I think that they expect us to present them with a digestible increase, and I think that needs to be done over time, and I think it should be done with planning and foresight independent of politics. So, that said, how bad do we really need this right now? Meaning right now. Can we wait till next year? Because every time we increase rates, I say, I'm not doing it the next time. I'm not doing it the next time. But now we're talking about sewage. You waited till now to hit us with the sewage? Really? And so, we did $2 for park maintenance. And you guys know what I'm saying. And so my point is, how bad do we need this? Can you tighten down the general fund and cover it with something else? The city in one fund, write a check to something. I understand you can't do that. But my point is there money somewhere else? Last week we talked about, this is a prime example of pot rates.
It is an enterprise fund, so you can't.
No, I know. But my point is that if we need the money from somewhere, we can, every time we need it, we go to the fleet fund. And we voted for marijuana tax last week. My point is that there's got to be something else than increase in rates.
The federal government has substantially changed the ammonia. That was a huge hit. There's been things that are beyond our control that we still have to meet, or we get fined $10,000 a month. So we had to do those things.
I understand. I voted for it.
Okay. I guess I want to make a motion that we accept the 3%, 2%, 2% raised.
Second. I'd like to get my word in first.
Okay. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I get it. There is fatigue, but it's part of the set of us, our job, to relate that information to the residents. It's y'all's job, too. You help us with that. Politics aside, who cares if it's an election? Yeah, I'm going off. But you know what? I've had to do this before when I was up for an election. If you're making decisions for an election, you're making the wrong decisions.
I'm not saying I am.
I'm just saying, but but it's been. You brought it up that this is the worst time to happen because there's an election coming on. Cares? This is the cost of doing business. I hear time and time again from people in the public, run government like a business. We are. When costs increase, unfortunately you have to pay. Put those costs on the consumers. And unfortunately, that's what we have to do. Do I want another 3, 2, and 2? No. And then in 2021, the council at that time is going to have to figure out what they're going to do because, it looks like it's going to go in the red again. But, again, I've heard this from staff before. that we are very efficient of what we're doing. I remember when that bond discussion came up for the wastewater treatment plant. $40 million was the price tag. I think there wasn't a member of council who didn't swallow hard on that one, knowing that we were going to have to go ask folks, hey, we need you to bond, and eventually we're going to have to increase the rate. Again, we're running government like a business with efficiencies. That's what we're charged to do. I don't think any one of us wants to add on an increase of fees. I sure as hell don't. But again, there are things we had to do as far as the wastewater treatment plant to bring it up to federal standards. We are doing that. Again, the cost of doing business.
So I want Becky to talk a little bit about this, but when they talked about the numbers, they said this is what it's going to look like if we implement it over time, and it's a smaller rate increase. I think Becky, and you sent me this email, you could delay it a year, but what it's going to look like in 2019 is a bigger increase.
Yeah.
I think the point that Councilmember Bagley made is a good one to look at as we look long term, is to put within the rate structure some type of index that we utilize, and that index adjusts as we're going through annually. I've seen that done before, and that really can kind of help with your inflationary increases and your cost of whatever it is that you're dealing with. One of the things that we didn't talk about that I've seen in other utilities, and especially in water, is chemical costs, because those are really volatile. And all of a sudden your chemical costs can shoot through the roof and completely change your pro forma. I think one year that was a big issue on the water side with carbon, and I think that was a result of the amount of carbon being purchased in China. And so those are all things that impact that cost structure that you're looking at. To be perfectly frank, and we wouldn't recommend this, you could also adjust your capital expenditures. What you have to understand is when you adjust your capital expenditures, you're also accepting risk, and you're accepting risk on the failure of a system down the road. Will it happen in 5 years? Who knows? Will it happen in 10? Who knows? What I can tell you, I've just remembered I had a major sewer leak once where, because of the corrosive nature of the gas, I think the sewer pipe collapsed on itself, and you had millions of gallons going into a river. And so those are the things that can happen over time, and that's what you're looking at. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. There are other options, but those other options are consequences to those options and what you're looking at.
Well, I think staff thought about this. They know the position that we're in, and they said this is what they think is the best options. And they presented a good, solid argument that was easy for me to comprehend. Nobody wants our sewer lines, 5 years down the road, breaking in our neighborhoods and leaking sewer gas and, causing explosions or whatever. It's just... Yeah.
And if I could add just one quick thing, too. I know the Mayor Pro Tem Bagley brought up the issue of a senior citizen on a fixed income. That absolutely weighs on all of us. That's something that we take seriously, and that's why we are pushing to be as aggressive as we can with our programs to assist, whether it be elderly or simply low-income folks, to be able to pay these bills, because really nobody should have to choose between food and utilities. That weighs on all of us, and none of us want to come forward. And again, as I mentioned early when I was up at the podium here, we are trying to look at best management practices from a financial perspective, and delaying the inevitable rate issue, I believe, tends to provide a greater shock into your customers than they might otherwise have. So it's never a great time to increase the rates, and trust me, we do not look forward coming down to talk to you about these. So, but we feel it's our job to bring these issues to you.
Councilman Moore. Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I guess I wanted to just add one more thing here. One of them being, these incrementally small rate increases are easier to accept, in my opinion.
That's right.
And, I mean, we could raise it 7% one year and then go for 4 years without any rate increase. But that, I think that initial shock really is a bigger impact on people than we give credit for. And even though people may not care what other people pay in other cities, we still do a really good job of managing our rates. And we provide good services, and quite frankly, we need to make sure that when I want to make sure when I flush the toilet, it's going to go somewhere that I want it to.
That's your quote for the night.
Yeah, it is.
Send it to us.
So the next question I have now, are we going to see an electric rate increase this year?
No, I don't think so. I think the one that they've talked about is the on the ECIF side. That's not for residents. That's the aid to construction side.
Because I think that could potentially ease the conflict here a little bit. Is if we can say, well, we're not anticipating a rate increase on electric this year. I mean, we're going to take a break this year, other than what we might already have programmed. So I just think we have to do it. If I'm in business, I want my equipment to run.
Yeah.
And because you're not making, I mean, if you're in business, you're making money if your equipment works. You're not making money if it doesn't. And the cost of having a catastrophic failure outweighs the cost of increasing the rates.
I think to add a little bit what Dale said, we do not enjoy bringing these to you all. As we've kind of talked about this, Councilmember Bagley used the word fatigue. We've used that internally to say that, you know, there's rate fatigue happening. We're cognizant of it. I think we're also cognizant of the impact that it has on folks in different economic brackets. And I think we all, as we're having these conversations, we bring our personal experiences to the table. We all know someone that is in a similar position that when it's a $2 increase, $2 means a lot to them. And so that's always in the back of our mind as we're looking at this. But as Dale said, we have to bring this to you all, because the last place that we want to be as staff is not bring this to you, adjusting the capital pieces, and then down the road there's a major catastrophe. Because then what ends up happening in that case is that folks go, well, why did this happen? And then you're having to explain that. And that's a horrible conversation. So I just wanted to get that out to council, because I think we've said the same things that many of you all have said tonight. And we've tried to bring you what we think is the most balanced approach.
Councilmember Christensen?
Yes, thank you. I agree. This is the balanced approach, and it's the most prudent and fiscally responsible, is to deal with something when it comes forward, no matter what. I agree with Councilman Santos. This isn't really a political issue. We're here to work for the city and the citizens here, not to worry about whether we get elected or not. So as a senior on a fixed income with no backup but my own money, I can tell you this is, you know, I certainly do understand this, but I would far rather have I know this is important, and it's essential that we take care of these things now, because it'll just get worse if we don't take care of them now. So this starts in 2018, and I would rather pay 3% and 2% and 2% than wait until 2020 and then get hit with 7 or 8 or 9%. Nobody wants to do that. It is much better to do these incremental things. So I applaud you for bringing this forward as soon as you saw it was going to be a problem, and I think we should pass this.
Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. And I wasn't saying that we shouldn't vote on it. I'm going to vote for this. My point is, it's hard. And I just want, and all the things that we say up here, we aren't there, Bob, in the water treatment facility. I've seen it, don't know how it works. and we have to trust staff. And really, all I'm asking is, if you guys, what I'm saying at the end is just, if you tell me we got to do this, and the way to do it is to increase rates because we can't cut our costs, I'll vote for it. I just want to make absolutely sure that our city staff is saying, we got to do it.
I believe that is what we're saying, Council Mayor Pro Tem. And the other thing to add to that is we will continue to cut everywhere we can, so long as we don't jeopardize the operation and reliability of the system. Again, that's our job as well.
You know, Bob, when you have certain people that you utilize as a litmus test. And when those folks tell you certain things, you sort of raise your head and go, okay, this is real. Bob is the last person on earth that I think would ever come in and say, we need to increase staffing or we need to increase rates because this is coming. Bob is constantly looking at how you move in the other direction. And so when I see Bob come to me and say, this is what we're going to need to do, then you know it's real, because you may or may not have heard this, but Bob, people say when he comes in, he's going to look at how to streamline this and make it more efficient. That's his reputation. That's what we need to balance a lot of our conversations. So when I hear him say that, I will tell you from my perspective, it's real and we need to do it.
Okay, fair enough.
Councilmember Peck?
I move that we take the staff recommendations on.
We've already done that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, I
it's
must have
moved
been
and seconded.
gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so it's time to vote.
Dennis.
We need to clear the, okay. That passes 7-0. All right, you got your direction.
Thank you.
Okay. So now it's time for mayor and council comments. Any comments from Councilmember Christensen?
I'd like to make one comment on the events in Charlottesville. Over the weekend, I heard an old a song that I'd heard before, and so I'll spare you my singing. But yes, please, you don't know. The chorus goes, "It's a hard life, it's a hard life, it's a very hard life, and this hard life is all that we know. But if we poison our children with hatred, then this hard life is all that they'll know."
Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I had the opportunity to go to Tempe in August. It was a little warm, but very warm, actually. But we have some greetings from a former staff member who it took me 7 years to see again, because I didn't want to I was really upset when he left to go to Tempe, and that's Don Bessler. So Don Bessler is the Director of Public Works in the city of Tempe. He sends his best. And from what I can tell, Don does all the work in the city of Tempe because he's always busy. But when Don left, he also his wife moved with him, who was Mary Murphy Bessler, who used to be the Executive Director of the Longmont Downtown Development Authority as well. So when they moved to Tempe to some greener pastures, we lost two great individuals. One worked for the city, one worked for the DDA. However, I did tell Don that the water in Tempe is really, really terrible, the tap water, and that I wasn't supposed to tell Dale, but our water is much more superior than theirs. So at our Hilo conference, again, it was about 125 or 200 degrees. The Hispanic Elected Local Officials is a National League of Cities constituency group. We talked healthcare, immigration, and NAFTA. There is going to be a resolution from Hilo, which has not been done in quite a while, regarding the North American Free Trade Agreement. in support of continuing that. We toured the port of Tucson, which is a lot cooler than Tempe as far as degrees. But then we also toured, we also got a very good presentation, pardon me, but we, where is it? From the, oh man, from the, some growers that are on the U.S. side and Mexican side, the Nogales, Arizona Produce, the Fresh Produce Association of the Americas, talking about how NAFTA will, if we pull out of NAFTA, how that would greatly affect the fruits and vegetables that we now get to have year-round that we didn't used to always have. We also toured a company called MTD, which is a manufacturing company in Mexico that manufactures 2 horsepower motor blowers or weed eaters or what have you. While the pay may seem very small in Mexico, the benefits that this American company has given and provides to the Mexican workers is tremendous. Will NAFTA affect them? Not so much, but it will with the cost of sending stuff over the border. Lastly, school's back in session. Thank goodness. As Councilmember McCoy always used to say, just remember, watch your speed in school zones, and watch out for kids crossing and riding their bicycles. We had one tragedy several years ago, a friend of my daughter's. We don't need any others. So, and of course, just be a little bit more cautious with your speed and the control of your vehicle, or even if you're riding a bicycle or being a pedestrian. And lastly, well, the very last thing is the horrific events in Charlottesville. I lived in Virginia for 4 years. Visit Charlottesville many, many times. It's a beautiful city. It's a wonderful city. I think Senator Gardner said it best: call hatred what it is, white supremacy what it is. It doesn't belong. So my thoughts to the 3 people that were killed in those events on the other day.
Yeah, my son went to law school at UVA, so I've been down there. It's a very beautiful city. And, I do have to take my hat off to Senator Gardner. I don't always necessarily agree with him, but I think he did make a great statement of leadership about this whole issue and calling, evil evil, and I think that shows good leadership. So I was also at the opening of a new French cafe. Is it Madeleine? Yeah. It's a French cafe at the Village's Peak. They even have some really tasty food and some healthy foods. So, yeah, I hope everybody gets a chance to try out our new restaurant at the Village's Peak. Did I take your thunder? I'm sorry. All right. All right. City Manager, any remarks?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
City Attorney, any remarks?
No comments, Mayor.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.